The meeting of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Garcia has asked to be excused this evening, and Director Jackson will be chairing this evening's meeting. Director Herndon?
Present.
Director Leonard?
Present.
Director Zomber?
Present.
Director and Chair Jackson?
Present.
That's 4 present, 1 excused. We have a quorum. We do not have any other board members attending tonight. We have also invited our city council members and mayor, so if any of you are in the audience and I have not yet seen you, please stand and be recognized. All right, thank you.
All right. The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wishes to participate to do so, and asks those who do not wish to participate, please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted from the Central Service Building. This meeting is also broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found in the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta de la Mesa Directiva de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799 e introduzca el número de reunión 832-0725-4267, seguido por el símbolo de número. Luego, introduzca el código 883149, seguido por el símbolo de número. Nuevamente, para escuchar esta reunión en español, llame al 312-626-6799 e introduzca el número de reunión 832-0725-4267, seguido por el símbolo de número. Luego, introduzca el código 883149, seguido por el símbolo de número.
For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to our Secretary, Dr. Owen Moore. We have no virtual speakers registered. The committee will accept public comments on tonight's agenda items. Speakers may only address the item from which they've registered. Questions from the public may not be answered during the public comment period. Following public comment, the committee will begin its discussion and no additional comments will be accepted. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the chair reserved the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments, questions, or requests should be directed to the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who engages in such harassing or intimidating words or actions will immediately be asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called and the offending parties will be removed from the meeting. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, the individual will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. Also, No other than any members of the board, designated staff, and those who've been invited to present or participate in the items of business will be allowed on the stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page of the MPS website. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item 1 is a listening session on the implementation of school resource officers as a result of Act 12. This is an informational item for the purpose of gathering information from the public on the re-implementation of school resource officers.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. First, I would like to mention that the mayor and any members of the Milwaukee Common Council were invited to join us to hear from the public. I would like to welcome those who have joined us. All right. We will begin by having the administration give a brief update, and then we will move to public comments. I will remind board members and Common Council members that this issue is still under negotiation, and we will not have a discussion and no action will be taken tonight. Will the administration please give us a brief update?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, Interim Superintendent. This evening, I want to highlight a few details as we work to continue to work to comply with the requirements of Act 12 and implementation of an SRO program. Earlier this year, the preliminary steps to ensure compliance with Act 12 were initiated. Information was gathered amongst the various groups. MPS communicated with the city attorney's office, the mayor, and police chief to confirm an agreed-upon MOU. Following the confirmation of the agreed-upon MOU, the city attorney's office later requested additional changes, and we are now awaiting those revisions. MPS has continued to work with the key stakeholders to move the SRO process forward. Additional communications include a reach out to the National Association of School Resource Officers to request information and logistics about the process of getting the officers trained. MPS stands ready to accept SROs as soon as they are available, as MPS does not hire police officers. As we continue working toward implementation of the SROs, I want to emphasize that we take the safety of our children and staff seriously. We employ 286 school safety staff, safety supervisors, and district-wide protocols to help ensure the safety of students while in school. The implementation of SROs will not detract from these measures. It is important to remember that the implementation of SROs is a result of a shared revenue agreement with the City of Milwaukee. Milwaukee Public Schools was not a part of that shared revenue agreement, nor those discussions that included the requirement to implement school resource officers. And MPS did not receive funds from the shared revenue agreement, which was upwards of $200 million, which resulted in the implementation of SROs being an unfunded mandate on the district. Again, we are taking every step we can to comply with the law to implement SROs. This concludes our SRO highlights for this evening.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, we will now move to public comment. Again, the chair wishes to thank the members of the Common Council for joining us in this listening session, and we thank members of the public who took the time to share their thoughts with us on this important topic. Our first speaker tonight, excuse me if I mispronounce your name as well, Adonisha Cherry. And once again, I apologize for the mispronunciation of your name. You come right to the middle here. So, yes.
Okay.
So, say your first name and spell your last name.
Okay. My name is Adonasia Cherry,
Adonasia, gotcha.
and that's spelled Chery. I'm a junior in Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm here today for all school board members to stand against any efforts by the city or the... I cannot do this.
Take your time.
By the state to form armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools, I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2025 and 2024 school year. I said that backwards.
Okay. Keep on.
School year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover costs of the basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom, taking away an additional $2 million from the classrooms to pay for armed cops to the students to be directly feeding into reinforcing the schools to school prison pipeline. It is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and devastating our future. This idea matters to me since it would be happening in my school. Personally, I've already heard negative details about having officers in schools. For example, some young innocent boy had gotten his neck stepped on by an officer, almost losing his life. I feel instead of spending $2 million on police officers coming to MPS schools, it should be spent on more extracurricular activities or just certain places where students could go chill while doing work or spend their lunchtime. Especially at my school, there's a lot of seniors walking around the building because they don't have any classes or nothing to do but they do have to stay for practice, etc. Board members should listen to my testimony since, first off, it's your job to listen to me. And if roles were reversed, y'all want to be listened to. Students, youth, and citizens across the Milwaukee watching, we urge you all to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12.
Thank you. Did a good job. So what I'm going to do, because it's quite lengthy, I'm going to call 3 speakers up at a time. So starting with, and once again, excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Ramada Thiam, Joseph Johnson, and Martez Cox. And like I said, excuse me for mispronouncing your name.
Hi, my name is Ramata Cham.
Okay.
Yeah, Thiam. Okay. My name is Ramata Cham, and I am a junior in Milwaukee's public schools. I am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back into Milwaukee public schools. I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for students' resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into and reinforcing the school-to-prison/deportation pipeline. It is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and de-investing in our futures. Before I attended Ronald Reagan High School, I went to Rivers King Middle School. I can attest to the culture at King High School, but at the middle school, fights seems as if they're a part of a weekly routine. There was this one particular fight that escalated to the point of police involvement. It was more than just a fight, though. Police dogs were brought in to sniff out drugs in lockers. Children on the sideline were locked in classrooms for hours on end. And the children who were unfortunate enough to be in the hallways were criminalized to the point of handcuffs and being kneed down. Now, I'm aware that some might say this extreme police involvement was the fault of children and that it somehow taught them discipline. However, it would be ignorant to ignore the fact that 13, 12, and 11-year-old children are treated as criminals by adults, people whom they are repeatedly told knows better than them. They will internalize the idea that they are indeed criminals. Instead of MPS striving to achieve a future where school is a step students take before prison, we should be striving to create a future where school provides students with the tools needed for them to create their best life. MPS alumni should view the district as part of the reason for their success, not a system they're forced to survive through. Students, youth, and citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We urge you all to vote against any last-minute amendments and additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resources officers as mandated by Act 12.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One second. We're good. You good? No. Waiting for the light. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. We're good? All right. You got the floor, Mr. Joseph Johnson.
My name is Joseph Johnson. That's spelled Johnsson. I am a senior in the North Division of Milwaukee Public Schools. I am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any effort by the city or state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to 2024 through 2025 school year budget, and includes funding for students' resource officers as mandated by Act 12. This matters to me because I care about the safety of my friends and my peers at my own school. And this has a personal matter to me because it is my school. Thank you. I've had some type of bad experience with cops with my own family members and with my peers at my own school, at different schools, not even in this state before. But I've had terrible experiences with police officers in schools. In my opinion, I think the money should go to extracurricular or a school, more than a school counselor, like a school therapist. Because in my opinion, if students don't have good mental health, they're not going to feel obligated to do their own work in school. And they're not going to be wanted to do what they need to do to get the job done in their own classrooms and stuff. And I also think that the money should also go to extra curriculums in schools, because the school, extra classes and extra curriculums, because the school literally in my school, there's almost no classes, and the classrooms be packed and it be full, and it would be 51 kids in one classroom, and there'd be almost nowhere to sit, and the teachers would literally be stressed out because how many kids are in the classroom at once, and the students are not going to be able to sit in one classroom. They're going to be out in the hallway or not even in school at all. And students, youth, and citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We urge you to all vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to 2024 through 2025 school year budget. This includes the funding for students' resource officers as mandated by Act 12.
Thank you. After Mr. Cox will be Deandra Veal, Nia Evans, and Solan Perez. You have the floor, Mr. Cox.
Hello, my name is Martez Cox, and I attend the Milwaukee Public Schools as a 10th grader. I'm here to urge you that every member of this school board should oppose any attempts by state or city to reintroduce armed police officers into the Milwaukee schools. Please vote against any last-minute changes, additions to the budget for the 2024-2025 academic year that would include financing for student resource officers as required by Act 12. The cost of the essentials required to succeed in the classroom are already beyond NPS's means. It directly contributes to the strengthening school to prison pipeline / deportation. And to take an extra $2 million out of the classrooms to pay for armed police officers to patrol students and kids alike It involves investing in criminalizing MPS students and sabotaging our prospects. I have a personal connection to this situation and subject because of the long and difficult history that exists between law enforcement and Black people and Black communities. As a young Black person, I have witnessed numerous Black individuals shot and handcuffed, or simply just being in the area, but they were handcuffed and treated as criminals because they were the wrong color at the wrong time. Do you really want that to happen again? As in a Black school, having a kid, a child, hear a gunshot or hear somebody being taken down, that is not something that you should want to have in school. And students need education rather than not incarceration. This should not be important to you. Putting police officers in school should not be important at all. We have seen how police officers and law enforcement are already quick to injure/kill somebody out on the streets, and now you want to put those same police officers in school? That is honestly wild. And they not ready for it. Like, honestly, not to be not ready for it, but they don't have any training to talk somebody down, have a mental health conversation. So why would they be in school with students? The same police officers out on the street are now going to be in schools. That's not something we need. So I urge you to please vote no on this topic. Thank you.
All right, you have the floor, Ms. Veal.
My name is Deidre Veal, Veal. I'm a junior in MPS. I'm here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024 and 2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of the basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classrooms. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classrooms to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into the reinforcing the school-to-prison deportation pipeline. It is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from our future. Firstly, I need everyone to acknowledge that taking away $2 million to pay for armed cops and police officers is absurd, when you can just simply use it towards better classrooms to help the college and career centers that were placed in MPS in more hygienic things. This is not only removing important things for the kids of MPS's future, but it is also investing in the criminalization of MPS. Police officers have not been trained to be around kids for 8 hours, but they are trained to shoot, and that can be shown by videos that are still to this day being uploaded, shared, and displayed to other students. And if you look at all the videos, police officers are shown as being aggressive. Adding police officers to a district that is primarily Black and brown kids is just simply ridiculous when we are the ones who are always targeted or seen as loud, ghetto, and unprofessional. Students, youth, and citizens around Milwaukee are watching. We urge you to all vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nia Evans, EVANS, and I am a junior in Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm here tonight to urge every member of the school board to oppose any attempts by the state or the city reintroduce armed police officers into Milwaukee's public schools. Since I'm a student in an MPS, I find it important that there be police in public schools. I feel like I'm in a prison when I imagine police officers in my classroom. It will not give me a sense of security, nor will it allow me to feel at ease in my own school or be free to be who I am. A police presence at school will only create fear. Having cops will simply make students feel aggressive, uptight, and anxious rather than protected and supported. Additionally, it gives me the impression that even a small error could have serious, severe impacts. Increase the number of counselors, mental health specialists, and social workers in schools if you want to make them feel safer, who can address the root causes of behavior issues and provide students with the support that they need to succeed. What I'm saying should matter to you because this is what you get paid for. This is why we elect you to have much power so you can listen to us and our opinions. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into the reinforcing the school-to-prison pipeline. It is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and devising from our future. Milwaukee resident students and young people are all watching as required by Act 12. We implore you all to vote against any last-minute addition or changes to the budget for 2024 to 2025 academic year that includes finances for student resources. Thank you.
And after Mrs. Perez, we have Jackson Thao, Tyler, as well as Sundas Muhammad. You have it, Ms. Perez.
Awesome. My name is Solana Perez, P-E-R-E-Z, and I'm an alum of Milwaukee Public Schools, coming to you now as a concerned community member. Sorry. I am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back in MPS. I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget. That includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS has been struggling financially and taking away an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed police and cops, to police students, is directly feeding into and reinforcing the school-to-prison to deportation pipeline. It's investing in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from our future. During my time as a Milwaukee public student, it was obvious to me at a young age the massive inequities that live within the Milwaukee public school system. I have never felt more policed than my time in MPS, and I can confidently say no other school system after that has made me feel that way. It would be an extremely irresponsible decision to further police and criminalize students that already are experiencing hardships and inequities in their communities. Like it has been said, and it will continue to be said, students, youth, and citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We urge you to all vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to this 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, you have it.
My name is Jackson Thao, T-H-A-O, and I am a junior in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am here today to ask the school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or state to force armed cops back into Milwaukee Public Schools. I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. From the beginning of my childhood, I've attended MPS from school to school, and I found that there's never been a need for SROs. MPS's implementation of SROs into our school system will instill fear rather than freedom of learning, completely opposite from the purpose of schools. It is not a necessity nor a want, so I must go. We must not allow the incorporation of this falsified belief of better. We must not accept the terms we have been given, but rather fight for the terms we have created ourselves. Instead of using funding that is necessary towards the education of students, it is used for unwanted provision of SROs. It is essential that we divest and invest in the future of students through the addition of more CACC staff, mental health support, better pay for teachers, and so much more. It is the connection with teachers that has allowed me to thrive, to act as a leg of support when I am in times of need and distress. It is not and has never been the SROs. It is the ones with weapons in our schools. They are not here to support me, nor to act as a leg of support. So it leads me to question, why are they here? So again, I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
My name is Tyler, T-Y-L-E-R, and I am a junior in a non-MPS school. I used to attend MPS for 6 years before going to high school, and I'm here as an advocate today. I am here to ask all school board members to say no to putting armed cops back into schools. It is investing in criminalization of young Black students and divesting from our future. Why would you spend the money and resources to put cops back into MPS when the same efforts could be used to improve bathrooms by making sure they are actually usable with stocked ministerial products and also providing updated textbooks? It could be used for healthier food options for lunch rather than putting the same cops into schools that we are scared of in the streets. I've had experiences with officers manhandling my brothers, so I can only imagine them handling the students in these schools when what they actually need is guidance and support. We urge all students, youth, and citizens across Milwaukee to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding student resource officers mandated by Act 12.
Thank you. And after, Ms. Muhammad, we have Tahadra McKenzie, Jennifer Collins, and Ellen Riviera. You have the floor.
My name is Sundus Mohammed, Mohamed, and I am a junior in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back into Milwaukee Public Schools. I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into the reinforcing the schools to prison deportation pipeline. It is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from our future. As someone who has friends and family in MPS and some that have disabilities, it is vitally important that I come here today to tell you that by funding these resource officers and taking away money from important things, you will be creating a more hostile and threatening environment for students instead of them feeling safe and having more resource for emotional support. Giving money to resource officers to make students feel like school is a place they cannot come to and they cannot express how they feel. Students that I personally know who have ADHD and some who are undiagnosed, by bringing in these hastily trained officers to take down criminals in the city into MPS at the cost of school resources, it makes me as a student of MPS feel like MPS does not care for the students and teaching us to be the future leaders in the future of this country, but care for putting more into schools to potentially enhance the violence in schools and in the city. MPS should use this money to provide more resources for disabled students and students and staff that do not have safe environments for them at school. School should be a place students come to in order to feel safe if home life is not doing so, such as school therapists and putting money into lack of teachers. MPS is creating a future, and it is important for us to determine how you shape it. How we are treated in school shapes us to how we treat the world. School is a place that should teach students and not police them. Students, youth, and citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We urge you all to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three again, like I said, excuse me for mispronouncing your name, Tahadra McKenzie, Jennifer Collins, and Ellen Riviera. Okay. Next, we have Nate Jones. All right. Yes.
Jennifer Collins, Collins. My name is Jennifer Collins, and I've worked at North Division for the last 8 years and at other MPS schools prior to North. I'm here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or state to force armed cops back in MPS, especially at North Division. I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding for SROs as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of basic necessities that we need in our schools. In addition, taking away $2 million from our schools is directly feeding into and reinforcing the school-to-prison pipeline. Do you want to be complicit in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting in their future? I urge board members to instead use the money to invest in our students and schools. Our students deserve better. At North Division, we need money for teachers and to offer more electives to our students. We need mental health resources, more counselors, more school social workers. We need basic supplies and better lunch. North students deserve to have the same or more resources that the schools like Reagan and Golda Meir have. Our needs are greater at North, yet we are perpetually understaffed, underserved, and underfunded. Over the last 3 years, I've written over $20,000 of grants and donors choose projects just to get basic supplies for our students and programs. One of our English teachers just wrote a donors choose project for pencils and journals. Pencils. Our gym teacher and basketball coach just wrote 2 donors choose projects to get things like basketballs, cones, and practice jerseys, because our school has lacked proper equipment for over a decade, probably more than that. On Friday, our music program was shut down due to our meager budget and third Friday counts. They took all the instruments, the stands, the chairs, everything is out of our music wing. Our music classrooms are empty. An English teacher was also cut due to our budget. How does that help us raise our students' reading scores? Our schools should not lack basic necessities in classes like music and English due to a lack of funding. Board members, we should not put funding into SROs. We should put funding into our schools. SROs will do more harm than good.
It's been like that on
Thank
the
you.
north side. Historic. 10 years plus.
She worked on the north side.
You have the floor. You have the floor.
My name is Nathaniel, last name Jones, Jones. And I am a senior at Audubon Technology and Communication Center at Milwaukee Public Schools. I am here to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. This is important to me because I have to be there on a day-to-day basis. We are funding money for the wrong things. Why are we funding money for more security rather than counselors? A cop is not trained to do what a counselor does. You're not calling the police before something happens. You always call them after something happens. We should fund more for counselors because a counselor actually sits there and try to talk to the student before they try to take things even further. We are being trained to get ready to go to jail. We are being monitored 24/7 everywhere we go. Even when we have to go to the bathroom, we have to ask the security or we have to ask a principal to open the bathroom doors like we're little kids. That's not preparing us for the real world. We are being fed food that doesn't even look edible. Yeah, it might look good on the menu or online, but if you actually look at it yourself, and you will see the trash that you are being served. How do y'all expect students to focus for 8 hours if they are hungry and have headaches? This is where money should be going. This is where money should be going to, not cops. I am asking you to vote against any last minute amendments or additions in the 2024/2025 school year budget. That includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by the Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover costs of the basic necessities to cover necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into the reinforcement the school to prison pipeline. It is investing into the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from our future. And vote no.
Thank you. Up next, 3 speakers, Terrence Simmons, Dejan Hughes, and Isaiah Hall Niemiller. Terrence Simmons, Dejan Hughes, and Isaiah Hall Niemiller. And I want to thank all the speakers so far.
Terrence Simmons is not here.
Okay.
My name is Isaiah Hall Niemiller, HALL-KNEEMILLER. I am a sophomore in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. The presence of law enforcement can create an environment of fear or anxiety among students. Also, there is evidence suggesting that having police in schools affects students, leading to higher rates of suspensions, expulsions, and the risk for minor students. The role of educators and counselors should be emphasized over policing, as they are better equipped to handle behavior issues through supportive measures. I feel like y'all should listen because somebody else said, that's what y'all get paid for. And students, youth, and the citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We urge you all to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes the funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12.
My name is Dejon Hughes. I am in year 12. Hughes. I'm in year 12 in Milwaukee Public Schools at Audubon Technology. I'm here today to ask all school board members to stand strong on, I am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budgets that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of the basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classrooms to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into and reinforcing the school-to-prison pipeline. It is invested in the criminalization of MPS students and divested from our futures. I'm sorry. This is a really big issue to me as an MPS student. Personally, as a young black male, about 3 years ago, I had a bad experience with the Milwaukee Police Department. I wouldn't feel comfortable being around the police for 5 days a week. In any altercation with a police officer, I feel nervous just because of my past. I feel we shouldn't waste our budget on them. I would rather that we put our money into our lunch menu, as I have seen almost half of our schools not even want to touch the lunch. They just go to the vending machine and buy because the lunch looks not edible at all. And buying up-to-date books as we're reading books from like the early 2000s. I ask that you hear us out because we are the ones that's going to school every day, so we should have a big say in these decisions as we are the ones who are going to have to deal with it. Student youth and the citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We urge you to all vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 24-25 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Chad.
Thank you. Next three speakers, Azariah Crawford, John Fleshner, Arnez Barnett. I'll say those names again. Azariah Crawford, John Fleshner, and Arnez Barnett. Yep. Take your time, you got it.
Hi, my name is Aria Crawford. Crawford as CRAWFORD, and I am a freshman in MPS Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm here today to ask the school board members to stand strongly against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or addition to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for students, resource officers, as mandated by Act 12. The issue I have with Milwaukee MPS School Board is y'all taking away $2 million from schools to enforce police officers instead of putting them into school supplies and teachers. Like, we have a lot of students out here in the halls, not going to class, skipping school, a lot of seniors going home because they don't have classes, they don't feel safe at school. And for y'all to put police officers in school that are armed with guns, tasers, batons, and everything, that will make us feel less fortunate and less safe to come to school. Y'all taking away the $2 million to pay these people to do this, y'all can be putting these $2 million into school supplies, notebooks, mechanical pencils, pens, better computers, better constructions around the school. My auntie, when I was younger, I saw her get her arm broke in front of me while she was coming from high school because a fight broke out, and they thought the police officers thought she was into it with one of the girls, and she was simply trying to get home. Bringing police officers into the school will cause more damage, more harm, and a lot of less students, a lot of less kids, and a lot of less teachers. It don't bother me to put security guards in there, but for y'all to put armed police officers, that's a big deal, because anytime or any way, a police officer can easily not have their gun on safety and easily shoot a student. Black students are getting killed every day out here by white police officers. We can have more support teachers like therapists, social workers, or psychologists to help us bring down our mental health issues. And y'all putting this $2 million somewhere into these police officers' hands to where they can do anything that God knows what with it, while y'all can take this time and put it into school supplies. So again, I ask you to stand against any offers or any mandate to put police officers into Milwaukee Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Inez Barnett, Barnett. Okay. Having police officers in the school would be an intimidation tactic for kids that already have a bad reputation with police. It'd be forcing kids and police officers to be in an uncomfortable situation. What would happen if some police officers didn't like kids? As a student, I wouldn't want somebody of power basically bullying me just because they can. It's honestly unethical for students on the receiving end of it. They will be there basically criminalizing students if they get into arguments or situations that would lead to fighting. Those students will end up with unnecessary records at a young age, and kids are gonna make mistakes because it is a part of life. Some police officers like to use excessive force on kids just because they're kids and can't do much. And also, some police officers aren't trained to deal with kids. It would be uncomfortable for everyone in the end. The security guards we have now already treat us like we are humans while doing their job, and we're willing to go to them if needed. Having police would be a different type of intimidation and just unnecessary for everyone. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Fleisner. I'm a teacher at Hamilton High School. So I'd like to remind the board that this directive came from the Republican-dominated legislature in Madison in direct opposition to the Democratic will of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors. It's an attempt to undermine local control and attack Milwaukee Public Schools. This directive should be fought in the courts and opposed by the board and administrations. Students should not be subject to over-policing by putting cops in schools. It will obviously lead to more contact with the justice system, to which students of color and working-class students face much harsher penalties. So students at my school, they surveyed their peers, and it was overwhelmingly that students oppose police in schools. I read through student statements that say police make them feel intimidated and cite MPD's history of abuse as evidence of their prejudice present in the MPD. We shouldn't rely on authoritarianism and intimidation to create safe schools, as it ultimately contributes to a negative learning environment. Students obviously feel very strongly about this issue. It's great to see so many students here, but I'd like to raise that this listening session was only announced like 5 days in advance. If we're going to have a listening session, there needs to be proper notice given. I know that there was some outreach done to local politicians. That same courtesy should be afforded to student organizations, organizations in the schools. So like 5 days isn't enough to actually organize a listening session. It's not really a listening session if we haven't done proper outreach to the community to get people to be able to say how they feel. I think it's important to remember that the community is in strong opposition to this. Every effort should be made by this school board to oppose this any way possible. It should be fought in the courts. It should be stood up to all together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next three speakers, Serenity Thomas, Angela Harris, and Malcolm Hunt. You have it.
My name is Serenity Thomas, spelled Thomas. I'm a senior at Hamilton High School and a part of YES, and I'm here on behalf of my peers and myself, and I want to talk about why police in schools would be petrified and intimidated. Although I haven't been in a school that has had SROs, I have had encounters with police, and I have been in situations where I felt where I'm down. My bad.
Take your time.
No, I'm really nervous, and it's cold in here.
It's okay.
Sorry, y'all.
It's okay.
But, okay, I've been in situations where I needed help, and I was treated like an aggressor by an officer who abused his power. Not all, but some of my peers can share the same experiences. Our schools are a safe place for all students. Even though we might roll our eyes and we won't admit to it, we look forward to coming to school. At Hamilton High School, we have security guards and a de-escalation center. I know Bradley Tech do too. I don't know about the other schools y'all been saying North. I don't know y'all got that. It don't, but it's still there. I'm sorry, it don't, but yeah, it's there. So we got de-escalation centers, and basically what those is like to do is have the students take accountability, self-advocate for themselves and de-escalate the situation ourselves with the staff support and the security support. Our security guards are there in place for students who have physical outbursts who need to be removed and separated from one another. Going back to what I said a little while ago about my peers and our encounters with the police, like Mr. Fleissner said a little bit ago, he is what is it? I don't know what it's called, like the person over our YES group at my school in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. We took a survey, and some of the descriptions I got from my peers when reading the surveys was how they felt about the police: scary, intimidating, violent. Another question that I asked was, would you feel safe with them there? No, just no, no. We won't feel safe. We won't be more comfortable. We'll just be intimidated, petrified. Our school won't be a safe place anymore. It'll just be like a chore. How y'all think we feel? We like coming to school, I swear.
Thank you.
Angela Harris, Harris. So my question is, as a board, what legal recourse do we have against Act 12? In 2018, this board passed the Black Lives Matter at School resolution. One of the 4 national demands of that resolution is more counselors, not cops. The current counselor ratio in Milwaukee Public Schools is 400 to 1, with no signs of decreasing, but you already know that. Bringing SROs back to MPS is in direct contradiction to this resolution you passed as a board, as well as in a direct contradiction to the commitment that you made to our students. MPD already gets the lion's share of the city's budget at $300 million, let me be clear. At the city level, we have community organizations like ART that are fighting for the city to divest from policing and invest in mental health resources, and yet here we are talking about doing the exact opposite for our students. I'm not saying things that you don't already know, though, but I do have a few questions. I don't have to tell you what harm it would cause to bring SROs back to our schools, about how it disproportionately affects Black students in particular. And I don't have to tell you what it means when we push Black students out of our classrooms and into the community. We see it each and every day. What recourse do we have against Act 12 as a board? Our duly elected school board decided to terminate the contract between Milwaukee Police Department and Milwaukee Public Schools. And now the state legislature is going directly against what the community and the board has asked for. What legal recourse do we have against Act 12? They are taking the voices away from the community, and they are going above us with a consistent white supremacist talking point that our children are more inherently violent and therefore deserve to be over-policed. Instead of us over-criminalizing our children in a state where we know what the prison population looks like, we should be thinking about ways to provide for our students' mental health and wellness in our schools. Thank you.
My name is Malcolm Hunt. That's H-U-N-T. I am a parent. I have twin daughters who are seniors at Rufus King High School. I'm also a retired Milwaukee police officer of 25 years. During that 25 years as a Milwaukee police officer, I did 13 years as a school squad officer. That means that I was, me and my papa, we was trained to go into the schools and deal with the schools. I dealt with a lot of schools. Matter of fact, I see a few people that I dealt with quite a bit when I was with MPS. I was listening to the radios up coming over. They said MPS called the police over 3,000 something time, I believe they said last year. So I would say to the kids, if you don't want the police up in your schools, do not do anything that's going to call the teachers to call the police to come up in the schools.
How about the teachers in our classroom? Let's start there.
Mr. Hunt. Mr. Hunt, you can finish, sir.
With the proper training, if you don't allow the police to come up in the school, they're still going to be coming up in the schools because you're going to be calling the police because you're going to help. These schools are out of, a lot of people talking about the school. A lot of these parents need to start going up in these schools and see what's going on. Because a lot of times, these teachers are catching it up in these schools. These schools are out of control, a lot of them. Kids are running in the hallways. I be talking to safety. They don't want to touch them because they don't want to call the police on them. If the officers had proper training to go up in there and know how to deal with the kids, then you wouldn't have that problem of officers coming up in school. Let me just put it this way. If you call them for officers to come to the schools, they haven't been through no training, majority of the officers do not want to come up in the schools. They don't want to deal with the public school because there's chaos up in these schools. It is. It's chaos up in these schools. A lot of these schools, the kids are totally out of control. Fights breaking out everywhere. The teachers can't say anything. And so, like I say, if you don't let the officers come into the school, you're going to have more problems. You're calling the schools. You're going to have officers coming into the school that haven't been trained to deal with the with the students, and you're going to have more problems. You're going to have more problems. So you need to bring back the police officers in the school, but most of all, you need to bring God back up in the schools.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Let me put it this way. I'm 75 years old.
We have.
That's time.
That's our time,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Hunt. Our next three speakers, Nicola Honorato. Like I said, excuse me if I mispronounce your name. Amber West, as well as Yanigua Woodson. Yanigua Woodson, excuse me. All right. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening. My name is Nick Honorato, O-N-O-R-A-T-O. Chair Jackson and members of the committee, I'm speaking as a parent of 3 MPS students. When city politicians went hat in hand to the legislature the legislators from outside the city told them that if they wanted to raise their funds, they needed to put cops back into schools, armed cops back into schools, and they agreed. Never mind that the students, the staff, the families, and MPS had been clear that we want more counselors, social workers, and mental health services in our schools and not police. Never mind that the mandate came from the people who don't live in this community, don't have kids in this district, and waste no opportunity to demean and demonize this district, the people who work here, and the communities that it serves. And never mind that they refuse to pay for it, instead demanding that we take millions of dollars out of the classrooms and send it over to MPD. I'm not standing here to paint MPD as bad guys. They do dangerous jobs in our communities, but we are part of those communities. We shouldn't have to pay a subscription fee to have our calls answered or to have traffic monitored for reckless driving around our playgrounds. We are Milwaukee's public schools, and we are on their beat. A study out of Chicago showed that students with SROs in the buildings are 4 times more likely to have police called on them for minor infractions or disruptions. It also showed that 90% of top cities analyzed in this study showed that there were advocacy efforts to remove or reduce SROs from schools, often led by students. These students. When San Antonio replaced SROs with care teams to assess students in mental health crisis, they found success. When schools were trained in restorative justice and culturally responsive practices, they see misconduct drop by 31% and suspensions down by 50%. We need to invest in social workers, counselors, and mental health services. We need to allow the people, and we cannot allow people to score political points by putting our students' safety and freedoms at risk. Thank you.
Good evening, school board. My name is Amber West, West W-E-S-T. I am the high school organizing manager for Leaders Igniting Transformation, otherwise known as LIT, a nonprofit that has worked in over 15 plus MPS high schools for the last 7 years. I'm here with a bunch of my students today for MPS school board members to stand strong against SROs. Again, we are asking you to say no to any and everything requiring SROs. As a community-based organization, we currently have over 150 students attending Milwaukee Public High Schools. Weekly, I hear the horror stories from staff and students about the lack of funding they have to function. I hear about the lack of staffing, the lack of quality of food, the lack of resources for students, the lack of student clubs, the lack of AP classes, the lack of proper training for paraprofessionals, the lack of literacy amongst our students, the lack of administrators, the lack of school supplies for staff. MPS is lacking and also continuously losing money. Our students dream of safe schools with edible school lunches, with teachers who cares, and clubs that represent them, and classes that honor them and their cultures. Our students dream of a school district that actually cares about investing in our students, not providing Band-Aid solutions to microaggressive racist stereotypes about our student body. MPS schools have not had a mass shooting. All high schools experience fights. All high schools experience vandalism and bad behaviors because that is what teenagers do. They are hormonal. They are looking for outlets. They are looking for people that can trust and take care of them. That is what they do to our school district. They trust y'all to take care of our students. We know the position y'all were all put in tonight. We are all here as a result of the deal that was struck between Mayor Johnson and the Trump-backed state legislator. We know that the deal ignored your authority as a democratically elected school board body. With that deal, Mayor Johnson and the legislators sold all of us out. But we are here tonight asking y'all to stand up against all school board officers or school resource officers on behalf of our students. We can bring 20 more students and 30 more students and 40 more students. We can pack school board meetings. We can pack town halls. We can pack city hall meetings. When are y'all going to actually listen to students? When is it time? When the school board resource officers harm our students and y'all have to pay that fee? At least listen to 20 of these students that are here tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Uniqua Woodson, W-O-O-D-S-O-N. I am a concerned Milwaukee Public Schools alumni and a community member. I'm here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city and the state to force armed cops back into MPS. I'm asking you to vote against the implementation and the funding of SRO officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of basic necessities that students need to be successful in the classroom. And taking an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is already directly feeding into the school-to-prison pipeline.
It's investing in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from their future. Using $2 million to invest in students will benefit students in a variety of ways, including keeping them in the classroom, increasing graduation rates, and preparing them for post-high school success. Funds could be funneled and should be used in the following programs: academic support programs like social emotional learning. SEL programs can help students develop self-awareness, self-regulation, and interpersonal skills. These programs can significantly reduce disciplinary issues, fostering emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. Next is trauma-informed training for teachers and staff. Educating staff on how to recognize and respond to students dealing with trauma or adverse childhood experiences can build a supportive environment that minimizes the need for harsh discipline and policing. Investing in these alternatives can create more supportive school culture that focus on prevention, support, and holistic development, rather than punitive measures like policing. Students, youth, and citizens across Milwaukee are watching. We all urge that you vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes SRO officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next three speakers, Selena Cruz, Hadaya Johnson, as well as Kathleen Otto, excuse me. And once again, I apologize if I butchered your name. I wasn't a teacher in my past life.
Good evening. My name is Selena Cruz, CRUZ, and I am a concerned Milwaukee Public School community member. I'm here today to ask all of you, the school board members, to stand strong against any efforts by the city and state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. I am asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. As we've been hearing from many today, MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away those additional $2 million from the classroom to pay armed cops to police students is directly feeding into and reinforcing the school-to-prison deportation pipeline. It is investing in criminalization of MPS students and divesting from their future. While I've seen some of my fellow teachers that I've worked with in MPS schools struggling to get basic necessities, and even hearing folks today saying they are struggling to get basic school supplies such as notebooks, tissues, Clorox wipes, and so on. And as we've heard by many today, we need to invest in counselors, social workers, and mental health resources for these students. Milwaukee students need and deserve to feel safe and supported on campus and not anxious and fearful that even a small disruption will result in punishment from law and enforcement. We urge you all to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hadaya Johnson, and do I gotta start this?
Yes, you have it. You're good.
Okay. My name is Hadaya Johnson, and I'm a proud MPS alumni from Rufus King High School. I'm also showing up in this space as a concerned Milwaukeean who is a product of MPS and worried for its future. I'm here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or the state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the costs of basic necessities, and we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into the reinforcing the school to prison / deportation pipeline. By deciding to support funding SROs is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from our futures. I've felt the ripple effects of MPS budget cuts since I was an elementary school student, 5th grade, losing things like art and music classes, or the lack of teachers in our schools in particular. Attending Rufus King Middle School, I often would be in the classroom with a total of maybe 10 textbooks for a classroom of 38 kids, or having to share calculators in groups of 4 in order to complete class assignments. Another example, I took Spanish in MPS for 6 years. 4 of those years, I had a substitute teacher. I don't know Spanish. Unfortunately, I have the same experience in a lot of my core classes, like math and reading as well. This is the reality for MPS students, and it is not okay. Being that MPS has historically been underfunded, and coupling this with the present reality that students are dangerously behind because of COVID, MPS is in no shape to allocate any money to student resource officers. MPS could use those $2 million on making sure that every student has their own textbook, workbooks for developing academic skills, classroom supplies like calculators and Chromebooks so students aren't struggling to share resources. MPS could use those $2 million to increase teacher salaries, to attract and retain qualified teachers, or the money could go towards professional development to train teachers on how to support our young people post-COVID. To be frank, there were a lot of times where I didn't have teachers and resources throughout my MPS experience, and the $2 million will cost us more than just money in the future. What is at stake is our quality of education, quality of life, and the future for Milwaukee. I ask you again to remember that students, youth, and the citizens across Milwaukee are watching, and we urge you all to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024-2025 school year budget that includes funding for student resource officers as mandated by Act 12. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kat Otto, OTTO. I'm the Policy and Campaigns Director at Leaders Igniting Transformation, aka LIT. I, like many other folks here tonight, am here today to ask all school board members to stand strong against any efforts by the city or state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools. The district should not be forced to cover the cost of this, not one penny. With the passing of Act 12, Mayor Johnson and the gerrymandered state legislature overstepped the authority of you all as a democratically elected body. Mayor Johnson knowingly agreed to this deal with the state legislature that has chronically underfunded Wisconsin public schools for almost 2 decades and repeatedly leaves us fighting over pennies at the district level. Mayor Johnson and the state legislature made this deal without any input from district leadership and knowingly sold out students, families, teachers, and staff, and is now forcing you all to pay the bill, take the blame, and get sued. Act 12 was championed by legislatures who are not part of our Milwaukee community. This gerrymandered state legislature has worked relentlessly to use public education in Wisconsin as a political bargaining chip, threatening to withhold state funds for teachers, staff pay raises, cutting DEI programming at the high school and university level, and firing higher education leaders who do not bend the knee. And they told Milwaukee taxpayers that our community won't receive its fair share of state funds unless we do the same. It is beyond clear that the goal is to dismantle public education in Wisconsin and to privatize education throughout the state. This retaliatory action is just the latest attempt at this multi-pronged effort. You are all here because you care deeply about the right of public education and about our Milwaukee community. Amen. That's why we're here too. I know that the way Act 12 was written leaves a lot of questions rather than answers when it comes to who will ultimately be held accountable, and I recognize that there is risk involved in that unknown. But this is your opportunity to stand up against attempts to hold on to and wield gerrymandered power in our state, to stand up against attempts to threaten our constitutional right to public education. We need your help. This is why we elected you. Please stand in your power and stand strong against any effort by the city or the state to force armed cops back in Milwaukee Public Schools.
Thank you. Next three speakers, Amanda Arlos, Cindy Tinya, and Rep. Ryan Clancy.
Good evening. Amanda Avalos, AVA-LOS. My name is Amanda Avalos, and I'm one of the co-executive directors of Leaders Igniting Transformation, as well as the parent of one of Milwaukee Public Schools' newest and youngest students. I'm here today to ask all school board members to stand against any efforts by the city or the state to reinstate school resource officers back into Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm asking you to vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024 to 2025 school year budget that includes funding for school resource officers as mandated by Act 12. MPS is already struggling to cover the cost of the basic necessities that we need to be successful in the classroom. Taking away an additional $2 million or more from the classroom to pay for armed cops to police students is directly feeding into and reinforcing the school to prison to deportation pipeline. It is investing in the criminalization of MPS students and divesting from our future and their future. As a parent of a student in K-3 at Riley Dual Language Montessori School, my primary concern is the continued well-being and safety of my child, along with the hopes and dreams of her having a healthy space to learn and continue to grow into the brilliant person she is. It's unfortunate that in the final days of yet another consequential electoral season in Wisconsin, we have to yet again defend the safety of our young people in Milwaukee Public Schools. As members of the Milwaukee School Board, many of which held your elected office back in 2020 when the unanimous vote was cast to dismantle the contract between MPS and MPD, I appreciate the work that you do to ensure that our schools are strong and safe. We all know how preventable this was, and still, since we find ourselves in this situation created by people outside of our city and allowed by those who currently lead it, it is still our responsibility to show up and reject the continued attacks on our public education. Students, youth, and the people across the Milwaukee School District are watching closely. We urge you all to, as many times as necessary, vote against any last-minute amendments or additions to the 2024 to 2024-25 school year budget that includes funding for school resource officers as mandated by Act 12.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Tena, last name Tena, and I'm a graduate of Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm here today to testify against the implementation and funding of school resource officers. It is egregious that the leaders of this city would trade the safety and well-being of students in exchange for revenue that in the end will not be used for Milwaukee residents who actually need it the most. Rather than fighting tooth and nail to get our students the funding and resources that they need to thrive, these leaders are aiding in further destruction of public education. They have no regard for the decisions made by the publicly elected board of directors. In 2002, Wisconsin ranked 11th in the nation for most per pupil funding. In 2020, MPS dropped to 25. Knowing the financial challenges that the district is already facing, I can't help but wonder how worse things could be if we removed $2 million from the classroom to fund this program. I'm also thinking about the settlements that the district may have to pay families should an SRO engage in abusive and inappropriate behavior as they historically have. Will it be $500,000 like that district in Pittsburgh had to pay? Will it be more? I implore you to fight back and not allow these so-called leaders to override your power and further harm our students and our school communities. Thank you.
Good evening. Representative Ryan Clancy, C-L-A-N-C-Y. And directors, thank you for being here. I know you're taking a lot on here in 2024. I'm here before you today as a proud MPS parent, as a former MPS teacher who has seen firsthand the harm that police do in our schools, and as a member of the Assembly who, to my great shame, passed Act 12. And it's the context for that I wanted to talk about tonight. Act 12 was a bucket list for what Republicans and across the state hate about Milwaukee. This provision was just one of many things in there which were nonsensical, should not be enforced, and need not be enforced. We had a tax on DEI, we had a tax on the HOP, we had a tax on Milwaukee's arts and culture funding, all of which only applied to Milwaukee. We can add putting cops back into schools to the list of things which should not happen. And we're fortunate that the Republicans were not just horrifically racist, because each of those things has in common the idea that Milwaukee and its institutions are ungovernable, but that they're also incompetent, because Act 12 was written, and this provision was written in a way that you can and should ignore it. There are no teeth, there are no specific timelines, and there is no funding. So what I'm asking you today is to uplift what the students behind me and the teachers and the other community members have said and do nothing. Wind out the clock until we as legislators can do the right thing and undo the harm that has come from Act 12, both from the incredibly regressive sales tax, but from all of those onerous policy provisions, which are nothing more but a tax on Milwaukee and our autonomy. Please, I understand the pressure as an elected official to say that because you care about safety, you're going to throw money at the police. I understand the pressure to ignore all of the data that says that that does not work, and all of the money that that takes away from things that do work. And we have no shortage of cowardly elected officials who do that at the city and the state and the local level. Thank you for not being among them. Thank you for standing up for our students and standing strong on this.
Thank you. Our next three speakers, Clarence Nichols, Amy Hulse and Thomas Paul, as well as Ingrid Walker Henry. Okay. I seen Mr. Nichols. Did he leave?
Yes, I'm standing in behalf of President Nicholas. Is that okay with the
That's
board?
fine. That's
Thank
fine.
you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gina Williams, AKA Dr. G, because most people can't spell my first name. And I'm standing on behalf of NAACP Clarence Nicholas. And the House has actually already spoken their concerns, and the majority, we stand strong, we being the NAACP, with what have been said. We agree that SORs are not needed in their school. My daughter is an ex-police officer, MPD, that's Memphis Police Department, as well as a detective. She served 6 years in the Navy. And trust me, I love my daughter, but I would not want her in our school system policing our children. She has actually been taught to kill, to take down, to protect. And our young people do not need that in our schools. I'm not saying that we don't need someone in monitoring our children, because we do. If we're not there for them, who will be? MPD? The police? Carrying guns, weapons, tasers? And our children make one mistake? They're young people. That's what they do. They grow. I don't think any of you ever been young before, have you? I know I have. And trust me, MPD, I didn't want MPD around. So, Dr. Panel, I plead and ask you guys to please do not put many of these untrained police officers to oversee our young children. They don't deserve that. They do deserve an education. They do deserve, I'm pro-ed. I'm a lifetime student. And they do not need the police officers in our school. So President Clarence Nicholas has invited everyone that is against this to come and meet us in headquarters this Saturday at 10 p.m. I should know the address by heart.
PM or AM?
AM, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. No, we're not having a party, not a night party, but we have a day party.
Okay.
To come out at headquarters on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive at 10 a.m. and meet with us so the NAACP will stand strong in persuading the board to fight against putting these police officers in our school. I look forward to seeing all of you this Saturday. I'll be there, and I'm ready to fight. I'm all in. I hope you all are.
Thank you.
Hi, y'all. My name is Amy Horst, Horst. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Thomas
What's your, spell your last name?
Powell. JHL.
We're a proud MPS family. I am a parent and an employee of the rec department. Thomas is a new high schooler at Milwaukee School of Languages. I'm also a peace builder. I'm also a voter. I'm also a restorative practices person. Obviously, don't spend this money. Like we all are saying that. Obviously, it's fiscally irresponsible. Money spent, like it's already budgeted. It's ethically irresponsible. My question is this sort of situation really about the cops, or is it just about adding the insult to injury that is the complete divestment of resources from our city and county more broadly? So if this is where it starts, what's happening next? They're coming after the neighborhoods that are near fresh water. They're going to come after the water itself. They say that the first thing to do is not obey in advance. I ask you not to obey at this in advance. Let it make the people who want it to happen, make them make it happen. You don't enforce it for them. Let them do that work. Do you want to say anything, Thomas? This is that amount of time you have left. What would you like to say? In favor, not in favor? Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
I got you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ingrid Walker Henry, WALKER-HENRY. I'm speaking in opposition of this item. The civil rights data collection done by the U.S. Department of Education shows that students of color are especially vulnerable to police violations and arrests. Similar research confirms that Black students are 3 times as likely to be referred to law enforcement compared to that of white students. In California, while Black students make up 6% of California enrollment, they make up approximately 15% of student arrests. Latino boys make up 28% of California students, but represent 44% of student arrests. The history of SROs is rooted in racism. They first appeared in the United States during the 1950s in response to the integration of schools and Black migration to northern and southwestern states. In the spring of 2023, County Executive Crawley and Mayor Johnson worked out a revenue deal with the Republican Representative Robin Vos and signed into law by Governor Tony Evers. The tax deal benefited the county and the city of Milwaukee. Milwaukee Public Schools did not ask for SROs and did not see a cent of this deal. In fact, it has been estimated that it could cost MPS at least $2 million, money that would be taken from our students' classrooms. As a parent and educator in MPS, I ask what makes legislators outstate and elected officials in Milwaukee so eager to police Black and brown students. These elected officials were so eager to police Black and brown children that they threw aside the idea of the MPS board exercising home rule. They didn't take the time to ask students, families, and staff in MPS if this is what they wanted. They did not provide the mental health support, nurses, social workers, counselors, and additional educators in the buildings, things that would make a difference in the lives of children. As a parent and relative of MPS students, it does not make me feel safer for my child or any of my family to have armed officers in schools. And I wish the county executive and mayor and any other elected official who voted for this would have had the decency to ask the community.
Amen. Our next 2 speakers, Luis Hernandez, as well as Alondra Clark.
Good evening to all of you. I'm Luz Hernandez, Hernandez, and I come before you as a Milwaukee Public Schools bilingual teacher, also as an MPS alum, and as a mother of 3 sons that all attended Milwaukee Public Schools. You have heard tonight, and will continue to hear for days, months, and years to come, that SROs do not belong inside of our Milwaukee Public Schools. Why not? Because data proves they are ineffective. Our students do not want them in their schools, as you have heard tonight. Parents do not want them in their children's schools, and the community has not asked for them. The vast majority of students in MPS are students of color, students like my sons and like myself. Just as it happens in community law enforcement, studies suggest that students of color are subject to violence and arrest by SROs, creating lasting harm in their lives and further sustaining the school-to-prison pipeline. Wisconsin state legislators and City of Milwaukee leaders do not truly believe they should be in our schools either, because if they did, they would be budgeting for them. Instead, they want to pass the responsibility of funding for something that has no data to back it up to MPS, who did away with SROs starting in 2016. If MPS is forced to pay for an initiative they did not ask for, school budgets will suffer and critical funds will be taken away from the resources that truly help our students learn, such as funds to expand existing successful school programs, more support staff in the schools, funding for basic school supplies, just to name a few. The state legislators and city officials who supported Act 12 are not truly interested in investing in our students who attend Milwaukee Public Schools, because if they were, they would have passed a budget that invests in our students' mental health by funding more counselors, social workers, school psychologists, support staff like school safeties. Safeties like Tito Figueroa, who was a beloved school safety when I was a student at Riverside University High School. Tito knew us by name and connected with us. We knew we could go to him because he had taken the time to talk to us as people. He wasn't there to belittle us or make us feel inadequate. He was part of the staff that was there to help, not hinder. SROs are not trained to form relationships with students. They are there to police the school and impart harsh discipline. This type of mentality only further exacerbates the school-to-prison pipeline, and it must not be allowed to take root in Milwaukee Public Schools again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alondra Clark. I'm the Vice President of the Youth Action Board at Pathfinders. I'm here as a concerned community member. It is absolutely unessential for police officers to be in schools. Reason being, they're trained to kill. A lot of them are military trainees. So to have them in a student population just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Schools have security guards. If those security guards need extra training to tame the student's behavior, then so be it. But a full-blown police officer is just not appropriate. It incriminates children at a very young age and allows them to internalize this perception that they're not fit for, the real world, for society, for success, for just to be just treated dignitely, And another big point that I'd like to stress is that the disappearing funds or lack of resources just going to the classroom in general. There are a lot of students between the grades of second all the way up to the high school where we're seeing like immense levels of inadequacy in terms of like criterion proficiency. Lots and lots of kids are popping up illiterate every day, and a lot of students aren't being able to get past through certain teachers' classrooms. I think that this $2 million in funding should be going toward tutoring programs, counseling, social workers. If we had any real concern for the students' long-term well-being, that's where this money will be going. It would not be going toward further accentuating this prison to pipeline that the school is steadily trying to perpetuate here And I did want to reiterate how this piece of legislation came from Madison on the Republican side, but this community does not support police being in schools at all whatsoever. Instead, we need to come up with more reconstructive means of de-escalation. When I was a student at Hamilton High School, we had a program which was called VFZ. And boy, did I love VFZ, because whenever I had a problem with the teacher, because I'm a debater, I always find a problem with the teacher, I'd run a VFZ, and they would save my behind from suspension, save me from having to write, extra papers. I think that's the kind of support we need. If anyone remembers VFC, I strongly suggest we re-implement that program. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next three speakers, Jennifer Holendorf, Jamel Harris, and Dr. G. I'm assuming you're speaking for yourself this time. Gotcha.
Hello, committee members, elected officials, Superintendent Galvan. My name is Jennifer Ohlendorf, and I'm a parent in the district, and I am the parent of 2 children who've recently graduated from MPS high schools and 2 children who are currently MPS students. And so you might think as a parent that I might perceive that school resource officers being in the schools might increase my children's safety, but it's exactly the opposite. I would like you to strongly oppose this unfunded mandate that came from the legislature as board members in any way that you're able to, or from the administration as well. And I wasn't necessarily going to speak on item number 1, but as we know, none of these things happen in a vacuum. I was actually here to speak on item number 3, which is here today. Item number 3 refers to an audit that was done by the district regarding the school expulsion process, and I'm going to speak on that in a minute, so I won't speak on it now. But I want to make a point that people who are here in the audience may want to stay for that item, because expulsion is the other way that many, particularly Black and brown students, but all students, are removed from their communities, often unfairly. The thing that made me think to speak on item number 1 particularly was the gentleman here who is a retired officer who mentioned the number of calls that go out to MPD. And in my family's case, when we had an experience where a school principal completely inappropriately called MPD, my son was arrested and spent 4 nights in jail, despite him having not done anything. So what I'd like you to consider is the ties between the ways that administrators are acting as police, perhaps untrained, and already connecting people to MPD, and the ways that that could escalate and become even stronger and more damaging to students and the communities of our schools if we were to bring SROs back into the school. Thank you.
Jamel Harris, Harris, District 4, over taxation through referendum with 0 representation. What we're hearing about tonight is deficiencies in MPS. We've had numerous children paraded up here tonight to give their testimony about their lived experience in MPS. That's the root of the issue here. That's what's led to the amount of police calls that this man here referenced. It's not about the children, it's about the environments that they walk into every day. So my question is to this committee and to this board, especially to you, Mr. Galvan, the guy that's auditioning for the most important job in our community. What are you all willing to do to raise the standard of our educators and administrators in our district? What's the plan to create environments where our children come to school and feel safe and don't feel the need to bring weapons and to cause harm to other people in those environments? What we're hearing about tonight is deficient teachers and administrators. What are you all going to do about that? What is in your purview? Those are the things that you can control. We can sit here and talk about SROs all night, but what we need to talk about is the root cause of this fictitious need for the over-policing of our Black and brown communities that we live in. Part of that is created by, again, these school communities and environments that our children walk into every day. Tech High School. My daughter plays basketball there on Saturdays. I walk into the boys' bathroom to use the bathroom, go to wash my hands, 2 out of 8 sinks work. There's nowhere for me to dry my hands. Do you think those children don't understand that you all don't give a damn about them? This is why those difficult children are fighting in the streets, because your teachers and your administrators start throwing them out of class in 1st grade. It's called the dimming of the light. This is what perpetuates the school to prison pipeline, is the policies, behaviors, and actions of your staff and our school community at large. That's what creates these environments. The lack of training for the safety that is in our schools that has been turned into a police force. The lack of training for the teachers, administrators, and the little bit of support staff that exists in our schools when we have a nurse that has to go to 4 to 5 schools a week, where our kids cannot get ice packs because there are none. But we hear from administration that we have supplies. When our kids are getting hurt, they are being mistreated by your staff because they don't have the supplies and resources needed to effectively perform their jobs. So I ask again, for you, in your purview, from your locus of control, what are you willing to do to change the circumstances and the environment that our children walk into every day, that creates the Kia boys that we hear and see about every day in our streets and on our news? What are you willing to do to stand up, not laugh, not smile, not back glad hand with people when you step into our community? Don't come out and disrespect us and not give us the time of day. You're here to listen, so now let's listen.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Get to the root. Change policy, procedure, and actions, and the outcomes will change. Until then, we will continue to suffer under this oppressive system.
One more speaker. Catherine Yang. I'm sorry, Miss Dr. G, excuse me. And next is Catherine Yang.
Hello, I'm back, and you all are going to see me more and more and more. This is not the first time you're going to see my face, so remember me. Once again, I'm Dr. G, Gina Williams, and I've recently obtained a position with NAACP I'm the youth advisor for the Youth College Council. So I will be out and about among our schools, meeting our principals, meeting people. There's a plethora of issues that's going on. It's not just one thing that's going to be fixed overnight. The agenda needs to be written and hit one by one. I'm actually from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was born and raised. And as a young person, the school systems then were not that well. I was born in the 60s, and that was during the time where separation, I was bussed out, I wasn't treated right, I wasn't wanted. It was horrible. I did graduate, thank God. I moved away because the intimidation that I received from some of our teachers were not good. And I was always being questioned, you're not going to be anything, or saying, who do you think you are? You're trying to talk white. And it was just horrible. But as a young person, I couldn't articulate. I didn't have the experience at that time to understand really what was going on. But school was not a good thing for me. So it was innate in me to move, and I left here. And I moved away, and I've been gone for 40 plus years. And I'm back. I've been back here for about 6 years. And I said, God, why did you bring me back? Because I did not want to come back here. The sad thing is that I came back to an environment that was worse than when I left. I'm constantly putting out fires as an adult. The racism is horrible here. Our black children with no education, with parents that are working. All parents are not bad parents. They have to work. They can't, our teachers, bless their hearts, because I've subbed for the system. How much time I got? And I don't have enough time to say what all I want to say. But I will be in the public. I will be asking God to give me wisdom and knowledge and direction, and those that are here that can help do something with our youth here, because we're failing them. We're failing them. I also want to give you the address to meet me Saturday at 10 a.m., 2745 North Martin Luther King Drive. It was 3rd Street back in my day, but Martin Luther King Drive. Come out and let's see what we can do together as people, as parents, as leaders to help build up Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is noted all over the world as the worst place for people of color to live. And I'm a witness since I've been back. They didn't know who they were messing with, but I'm a fighter, and we're getting ready to fight and get this city on track in a positive way. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. G. Catherine Yang.
Hello, I'm Catherine Yang, and I'm from Pathfinders. I'm a little nervous too. I am part of the committee for a Zero Youth Correction, and I am proud to be here tonight to represent everybody here and also my youths, all the youths. I just want to say pretty much from what I'm hearing, a lot of youth that I work with, most definitely in the community that I'm in, are related towards justice system, them being involved in the justice system. So it's either they were young and everything, but most likely young. But I do want to say that when our youth go to school, a lot of my youth that express to me at Pathfinders, they go to school because it's a different environment than their household. When they're at home, it's probably unstable for them. So that's a place for them to go to school because, to be out of that environment besides being at home. A lot of these youth feel safe at school, but I don't encourage armed law enforcement to be in MPS only because how much our youth have been going through already. Just behind their, in their background history, like you don't know what they went through. You don't know if they've been neglected. You don't know how much trauma they went through to the point where they're not probably in a good state of mind to even focus in school. So if they're bringing problems from home to school, there should be more resources for the youth that can actually have to counsel with or to talk to, or, let them embrace what they're feeling. Because if they can't embrace that at home, then where else can they embrace it? If they embrace it in the streets, that leads them to a different path where they're not getting the career that they would want. If they're being decriminalized at a young age, what put them in the future where maybe they want to be in your positions? Now they can't because of the criminal, what they did at a young age. Yes, that's all I have to say because I work with youth that has been involved with the justice system and it's not looking too good, and the population just grows and grows. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who spoke tonight. I appreciate all your comments and concerns. You were heard loud and clear. Again, the chair wishes to thank the members of the council joining us for this listening session, and we thank the members of the public who took the time to share their thoughts with us on this important topic. Madam Secretary, what's the next item?
Thank you, council members. If you are always welcome to stay if you'd like to, but we imagine you have lots to do. Item 2 is follow-up with possible action on Resolution 2425R001 on the relocation of Carmen High School. The recommendation is that the board, 1, approve Resolution 2425R-001 as modified, and 2, determine how it wishes to proceed relative to leasing options.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, Interim Superintendent, Resolution 2425R-001 was carried over from the June AFP committee meeting to October for recommendation. The administration asks that the committee accept this item with the recommendation as attached. Further, I am joined by Sean Kane and Bridget Schock to assist with any questions you may have. Thank you.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
We have several speaker slips on this item.
All right, I'm going to start off with three. Jessica Scott, Cecilia Collins, and Elisa Newville.
Good evening, members of the board and administration. My name is Jessica Scott, S-C-O-T-T. I have taught at Pulaski High School for 25 years, and I'm a 1995 graduate of Pulaski High School, and my son is currently a senior at Pulaski. I am fully invested in the success and growth of programs at Pulaski. This testimony is going to sound really familiar to the one I gave in May, because no movement has been made to alleviate the problems that still exist. There are currently 85 classroom spaces available in the building with 3 shared gym spaces. The classrooms are evenly divided between the 2 schools. Pulaski is currently allocated 43 spaces and Carmen is allocated 42. However, enrollment is not evenly divided between the 2 schools, and it never truly has been. In the 2020 school year, the Pulaski enrollment was almost 200 students more than Carmen's. This year, we're at 1067, and Carmen is at 675. We are educating 2/3 of the students in the building and half the teaching spaces. I am a science teacher, and I do not have a lab classroom. I am currently teaching in a welding classroom because there is water. At any point, if Pulaski hires a welding teacher, I will be displaced again to a room not conducive to teaching science. Pulaski has allocated only 4 of the 10 available lab spaces in the building, so science teachers must share lab spaces. This means that Pulaski is teaching science to 67% of the students in the building in 40% of the science lab spaces. Pulaski teachers also do not have access to their lab spaces to properly prepare for science labs and then must transport materials between spaces. This can create unsafe conditions if those lab materials are chemicals for labs. It also makes it near impossible to grow our IB DP program to include additional DP science classes because we lack the space to do it. Reagan currently offers at least 4 DP science classes. I am asking the board to please consider ending the co-location between Carmen and Pulaski so that Pulaski can continue to grow, but to also consider adequate distribution of space now for our students attending Pulaski. They deserve it.
Ms. Collins.
Oh, hello. It doesn't say talk now, but Cecilia Collins. I was here when Carmen flipped over to whatever. They were inside Pulaski. And I'm joining with, I have to go with the students on all of this, really. I'm going with community, residents in the city of Milwaukee, the whole 9 yards. It's not fair to what has happened over at Pulaski. It is not fair. And I'm asking y'all, you all as board members, to please take care of this business right today or whenever you can come to a decision. And I'm hoping this decision comes out like, okay, the other people got to move themselves up out of that building and give them access to what they need access to. They were doing well without all this happening after someone on this board went and voted for the other people. I was disappointed at that decision. I still am. But I'm really thinking about here they have in an IB program going on, their science, I remember what happened to the science teacher who had to leave the school. It displaced a whole lot of things, teachers to begin with. But the other part is when you infringe on what has already been positive and then you're going to throw it up in the middle of the air because of what happened was one vote. But I'm going to say this, please go in the direction of fixing the problem. making it, smooth it out, let people know that, you got to pack your stuff up and go because it impedes what's going on and what has positively had been going on beforehand. So my encouragement is, especially my board member, to vote on removing those people. And if you don't, I'm taking some action on your behalf to get you up out of your seat.
Good evening, Board, Sir Director Jackson, Milwaukee community, and everyone. Alyssa Newville, N-E-W-V as in Victor, I-L-L-E. I am here, yet again, as a proud MPS teacher, a proud MPS graduate, and especially a proud teacher of special education. Pulaski High School is my home, it is my community, but I am displaced and I am not happy. I am not here to say please, I am not here to beg, I am here to demand change, not just for me, but for my students. The reasons I get up in the morning and come to work. I work with the most vulnerable students in the building. I do not have space for them to go. For example, a student in a mental health crisis. Where do I have to put them in a de-escalation space? Closest area, accessible and open, was the copy room. Not only did I take a couple hits, so did the copier. Why am I forced to put my students in a copy room to de-escalate and calm down? Why do I not have adequate space? Why does Pulaski at 1,063, am I right? 67, have only 50% of this school? We have tried other avenues. We have tried asking. We have tried playing nice. We have gotten nowhere. Nowhere. There are no rooms that have been given back. There are no offices that have been given back. There has not even been a trash can given back. We need our space. I need to be able to teach. I need to be able to work with my students. So does every other special education teacher in Pulaski, as well as every other teacher, para, safety, administrator, all the staff. I need a place to go. Thank you.
Our next three speakers, Alicia Doxter, Benjamin Peterson, as well as Alexis Vetter.
Alicia Doxtater, D-O-X-T-A-T-E-R. I'm actually reading this on behalf of our IB coordinator who could not be here tonight because he's got a playoff game with the soccer team. So this is on behalf of Nick Gerard Larson. The International Baccalaureate, or IB, offers widely recognized and acclaimed programs to prepare students for college and career success. It also prioritizes intercultural understanding and bilingual language development. There is clearly a growing demand for this kind of academic option in Milwaukee, particularly one that serves ESL and bilingual students. However, under the current circumstances, sharing the building with another school, we are at capacity. This is despite the fact that all three of our IB programs, including the rigorous college-level diploma program, or DP, have a proven track record of supporting and including ESL and bilingual students. This is something that sets us apart, both within MPS and in the city of Milwaukee. We proudly celebrate our unique ability to offer an IB high school option that is highly inclusive of ESL and bilingual students. We have partnered with the IB to create a 9 through 12 IB for all. So our IB for all environment at Pulaski, and we are currently in the process of creating the only IB bilingual diploma in the state of Wisconsin. We anticipate a huge increase in interest, demand, and enrollment for our IB programs. Our current DP cohort has seen unprecedented growth from only 5 seniors completing the 2-year program in 2021 to a record 45 scheduled for this year and more than 80 next year. As we add additional DP bilingual options, this growth will surely continue. Additionally, due to classroom constraints under co-location, we are not able to provide students with the options and flexibility to a greater variety of IB classes. We currently only offer 1 college-level DP course in each of the 6 subject groups, while other schools without co-location have much more variety. Pulaski cannot keep up the successful expansion of our IB programs without greater control over the entirety of our school building. I ask members of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors to vote in support of this resolution. Please vote yes for high quality and inclusive IB programming. Vote yes for greater space and access. Vote yes for our ESL and bilingual students and families. Thank you.
Good evening, directors of the committee. My name is Ben Peterson, Petersen. I am a social studies teacher at Pulaski High School. I was here in May when this item was first in front of the AFP committee. One thing that stuck with me was the discussion that came after the public comment from the board of directors as well as the administration. And there were a number of questions that board members had for the administration. So I did my due diligence and went back to the tape and wrote down those questions here. So just as a reminders of those, one question that was asked was, what is the financial impact that could potentially come from losing Carmen? Could that impact losing any MPS-sponsored charter schools? One director brought up, how can one school scan students and another not in the same building? One director brought up, what does the exit of Carmen look like for the district and its effects on Pulaski? And another question was, how will the administration address the logistical issue of rooms being used between Pulaski and Carmen? And the administration response to that was, they acknowledged that Pulaski had asked for a new room allocation, but stated a decision had not been determined at that time, and that it would, in quotes, absolutely be addressed at the June AFP meeting, which we know did not happen as it was tabled to now. So I guess my question is, have any of these questions been addressed to the board as well as to the public, and will they be tonight before action is taken? Thank you.
Alexis Vetter, V as in Victor, E-T-T-E-R. I am a special education paraprofessional at Pulaski High School. I also was here in May. I'm in the classrooms. I am in the hallways. I am everywhere. So I asked the board and community to finally listen to the requests and conclude this co-location once and for all and bring equity back to our Pulaski students. I'm going to tell you a familiar situation, a situation we've been talking about for almost a decade now. One that was brought to the attention of the board in May and one that has still not been resolved. Every time the Carmen lease has been brought up, it has been passed, sometimes under the noses of people before we were asked permission. And the receipts are all over the news stories, all over the internet. Carmen does not scan their children in the mornings. Every morning, Pulaski admin, safety, and staff, safety, not SROs, I want to point out, greet students in the cafeteria. We scan them, we check their bags, we do everything possible to keep them safe. It is a normal thing that our students have been doing. The Pulaski students then turn in their phones and go through our scans and they go about their day. We are safe in that building thanks to those people and the safety procedures that we have in MPS in Pulaski. The Carmen students have a very different morning. They waltz through the front door and they go to their classes. Their phones are not taken, they are not searched, they are not scanned. How is this equitable? We notice, and our kids notice. These kids notice. No one in this room can say that this has ever been a successful cooperative co-location. It has not been functional, and it has not been equitable. Every day, our amazing Pulaski safety assists with these morning protocols, and then throughout the day, they tirelessly walk the halls, escort students, and make sure everyone is safe in the building. Our safety and our staff cannot be concerned with the small minority of unsupervised Carmen students and Carmen students coming through without passing through scans the same as every other MPS student does. End the co-location, end this inequality, and end this unjust and unsafe environment for MPS students, whether or not the building is done in 2026.
Our next three speakers, Megan O'Connell Tharp, Eric Gullickson, and Nicola Honorado. My apologies.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the AFP Committee and Administration. My name is Megan O'Connell Tharp, and that's spelled O''CONNELL space, no hyphen, THARPE. Pulaski continues to struggle with not having enough classroom space to accommodate our highly sought-after IB programming. We currently have 8 teachers without their own classrooms, to include several teachers who must travel to 3, 5, and even 6 different classrooms. This is preventing these valuable staff members from being able to display student work, or in general, to create a welcoming classroom with their own style related to their respective content areas with all of the necessary supplies to do so. The students of the traveling teachers never know where to find their teachers during other times throughout the day, or even before or after school. On the flip side, having 8 traveling teachers continues to displace at least 6 other teachers from their own rooms during their valuable prep time. This is not productive or normal for any of the parties involved, especially students. Compared to other schools, we will continue to have the extra and unnecessary challenge of attracting and retaining staff if we continue in this manner. However, this is something that can be remedied now, regardless of a lease extension. Please help us regain the usage of 8 or more classrooms, along with several office spaces, so it is fair and proportionate to the number of students enrolled at Pulaski. We urge you to vote to give Alba and Pulaski room to grow. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Gullickson, Gullickson. I'm speaking as the MTA secretary and also a fellow union high school teacher. Shockingly, high school programs need space to be run adequately. Pulaski staff and students have repeatedly told the board how co-location has limited their programming and have forced teachers, 7 of them, to work out of carts. There are also safety issues that have been mentioned, and both Pulaski and Carmen schools have differing safety procedures. Pulaski scans, as was just mentioned, it's students and has them go through metal detectors as well as using a wand to detect weapons. Pulaski students also must turn their cell phones. Carmen has no such procedures for their students and have had disruptions in their school as a result of that. This has led to Carmen staff needing to ask Pulaski to lend them their equipment. Pulaski school safeties have also had to deal with Carmen students causing disruptions in the building, taking them away from their responsibilities to Pulaski students. For the remainder of the time that Carmen has and will be inside the Pulaski building, Carmen must be a team player, and it does not, if it doesn't willingly, this school board has to obligate, they have the obligation to force them to do so. So, thank you.
Nick Honorato, Onorato.
The co-location at Pulaski and Alba with Carmen has been on the mind of both building communities for a long time. In May, we were here to urge the board to sunset the co-location when the leasing agreement ends. Since that meeting, the news is broken that Carmen will be moving to a new location, a facility that they can call their own. Now it's time to make sure that the students of Pulaski have the more equitable distribution of the space in the once and future Pulaski High School. This includes allowing the 1,067 students at Pulaski to have a more proportional footprint. To allow the 8 teachers moving from room to room on carts a place to teach by reallocating at least 8 room assignments from Carmen to Pulaski, along with 2 offices that will allow Pulaski administrators to better serve their students, provide safety and proximity to students across the building. There will be some transition stresses, but I'm sure that when it comes to safety and education of students, we are all on the same page. Pulaski students are currently not getting what they deserve. A quality public education because because they have been squeezed into a mold that will soon break. While we are all looking forward to the future for all these scholars, let's ensure that we are building on the strong foundation that Pulaski has been assembling for years by allowing them to grow, to spread, and to thrive in a school that has been the cornerstone of their community for 90 years. Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers, Ingrid Walker Henry, Luis Hernandez, as well as Dan Sonny.
Good evening. My name is Ingrid Walker Henry, WALKER-HENRY. I'm speaking this evening as the MTA president of 5,600 members.
I was waiting for you to say that. I was waiting for you to say that, girl. You missed it the first time. Go ahead.
You have the floor, Ms. Walker.
Thank you. The members at Alba and Pulaski detailed the issues they had with space and disparate student treatment last year and previous years. The student population of Pulaski is 1,067 students. There is no other school in the district with 1,067 students crammed into half a building. The students and staff of Pulaski are asking that the board do 2 things this evening. End co-locations so that no future school populations have to deal with teaching on a cart, classes in the hallways, parents not knowing where meetings are going to be held, 2 different student and staff populations running schools with vastly different rules and regulations, and to end the co-location and provide relief in the form of space given back to them so that 8 teachers and additional support staff actually have places to work and students have an adequate place to learn. Vote to end the co-location. Thank you.
Good evening once again, Luz Hernandez, HERNANDEZ, and I stand before you now as the MTA Vice President. So since this past May, a major change has happened with Carmen that might shift the co-location conversation since they have acquired a space for a new high school building on 20th in Oklahoma. From should the co-location end to when will the co-location end? So the question now is, do Pulaski students continue to get denied a quality public education due to lack of space in the building that they rightfully occupy as true public education students, while Carmen is still co-locating in the Pulaski school building? The ask of Pulaski administration of 8 more classrooms and 2 additional office spaces is only adequate, and this is an ask that it is my understanding the administration at Pulaski has made to the Carmen administration, and it has fallen on deaf ears. And so it is only adequate for the 1,067 students at Pulaski compared to the 775 students at Carmen. They are both currently allotted the same number of classrooms, but equal number of rooms does not translate to equitable educational experiences when Pulaski has twice as many students. This school board must do right by Pulaski students right now, today, and see the inequity in the distribution of classrooms when such a gap in student population exists between the two schools, and give Pulaski students the educational experience they deserve by granting them the additional classrooms and office spaces that the Pulaski School Administration has been requesting. Since we last met here in May, nothing has changed, as you have heard tonight already, at Pulaski. There are still 8 teachers teaching out of carts. There are still teachers sharing rooms. And as you heard earlier, there's a science teacher teaching out of a shop class. The 8 classrooms and 2 offices selected by Pulaski administration considers the traffic flow of both schools to provide minimal disruption to both campuses. So I implore you to please do right by Pulaski students and grant them the space that they need to adequately learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Soiney, S-O-I-N-E-Y. I'm the person that someone mentioned earlier who lost their position at Pulaski. I taught there 21 years and was excessed for speaking out against this when this first came about. And everything that we brought up however many years ago it was, the concerns were ignored at that time, laughed at that time, yet here we are. You listen to time and time again that Pulaski students and teachers got screwed in the deal. And we told you that would happen so many years ago. They need an immediate amendment to the current lease to give them the space they deserve. And speaking to the need for a possible year extension, I would urge this body to say no. Carmen currently has space in the Northwest building. There's plenty of space there. They could bus their students there for 1 year, and maybe Carmen could experience a little of the discomfort and crowding that Pulaski has endured over the last 9 years. And if we do need to extend that lease, I would, as a taxpayer, urge you to charge market rent instead of the laughable fee that's been charged in the last 2 leases. Thank you.
All right, for our last 4 speakers on this item, Ms. Angela Harris, Aaron Lippman, Bridget Sloan, as well as Fabiola Ramirez.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
These agenda items are getting less sexier and sexier by the minute. Angela Harris, Harris. I would like to remind everybody, since we're all up on our equity work tonight, that a characteristic of white supremacy is either or thinking. Thinking that it has to be either this or that. I would encourage us to think about the fact that these are all children that we're talking about. Now, I will say this. I believe that the co-location charters didn't work from the very beginning for this reason in particular. My daughter has been having basketball games at Pulaski High School, and it literally feels like 2 completely different schools operating in one building. And I can only imagine how confusing that must be to students and staff within that building. Carmen's made it very clear about what their plan is. They're going to take their children away from that building and move them into their own school. It's not about if, it's just when, right? And so I think that we need to also take that into consideration as we're having this conversation. They plan on leaving. They don't want to be there. I'm certain it's not a comfortable space to be in. Simply sitting here right now in this room, I feel very bad for the brown children that attend Carmen because of the way that they must feel. And I would also ask, where are the children, the students, and the families from Pulaski? Where are they at now, though? Where are they at today? Right. That's the whole point. They have children that attend both schools. Y'all are trying to pit people against each other when we really should have been coming here having a conversation about how we can make this work for everybody. But we're beyond that point now. It's just like I said, Carmen's leaving. It's not about if, it's about when. The end.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Galvan. My name is Aaron Lippman, L-I-P-P-M-A-N. I serve as the CEO of Carmen Schools of Science and Technology, and I was the founding principal of Carmen Southeast High School in Pulaski. First, I want to take a moment to thank you for your commitment to serving the needs of all students, all families, whether in traditional or non-traditional MPS school environments. I have great respect for all educators at Carmen, Pulaski, Alba, and all of MPS. In May, this auditorium was filled with families, students, and staff advocating for the future of Carmen schools. Our community left out of the evening feeling anxious and uncertain about whether Carmen would continue to have a home for over 1,000 students. Since that meeting, we have been working diligently to secure a permanent home. As you may know, Carmen Schools recently purchased land, and we are moving forward with plans to build a new facility for Carmen South and Southeast High Schools, which are currently co-located with MPS schools. This is an exciting and necessary development that addresses concerns expressed by some members of this board. It is also a large, complex, and costly project. We had hoped to offer more seats to students in the city. However, the resolution proposed by Director Zombor required us to pivot and consider combining our existing Southside high schools. While we expect the new facility to be ready for the 26-27 school year, construction delays are sometimes unavoidable. That's why I stand before you today on behalf of our entire Carmen community, requesting a one-year extension on our charter contracts and lease agreements. This will ensure stability for our families and staff during this transition, should any delays occur. If the extension isn't needed, we are fully prepared to vacate early with an early lease termination option. For the past 18 years, Carmen Schools has proudly partnered with MPS. We deeply value this partnership. We provide high-quality educational experiences for our students to and through college, while contributing to MPS in significant ways. Our co-location agreements at the Walker campus in Pulaski have fostered collaboration across schools, generated seven-figure revenue for MPS, and supported positive outcomes for students district-wide. As we look to the future, as a written resolution presents a challenge. It would deny us the flexibility to temporarily extend our leases beyond the 25-26 school year. We urge you to amend the resolution to allow for a one-year extension. This contingency would ensure that our students, who are MPS students, are afforded a stable learning environment and that our partnership continues to benefit all stakeholders. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration. We look forward to continuing our strong collaboration with MPS to ensure the best outcomes for all students in the Milwaukee community. Have a good evening.
Hi, good evening. I'm Bridget Sloan, that's S-L-O-A-N. I currently teach over 100 students a day in a classroom that has no windows and a floor that is a garage because it's technically an automotive classroom that's been turned into a real classroom. Over the summer, the classroom space was divided in half so that half of that classroom could be used as a bridging room. I don't teach special ed, I teach social studies. Yet now, where a makeshift wall has been put up, there are bridging students on the other side, which is great, the more the merrier, right? But it's crowded, and it's loud, and it's not conducive to a sound education. And so I think that I want to be clear to everyone in the room that what we're asking for is not for some students to have a better education than other students. What we're asking for is for all students to have the space necessary to be successful. That's all we're asking for. That's all anyone wants. And currently, the way that it is that Pulaski has over 1,000 students enrolled, and Carmen has less than 700. We just need some more rooms. We need the co-location to end so that we have that space, so that we can grow, and so that we can be successful. That's what we're asking for tonight. That's what we were asking for in May when we had students here, when Carmen had students here, when we had parents here. Transportation is difficult for our students, just as it's difficult for Carmen students, which is why you see a much more diminished crowd here tonight, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So, thank you very much. And again, we just want to encourage you to end the co-location. That's all we're asking. Add the agreed upon date and try and get some rooms back at a sooner date if we can. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Fabiola Ramirez, R-A-M-I-R-E-Z. I serve as Chief of Staff at Carmen Schools. I'm a proud Fratney Elementary, Lincoln Center of the Arts Middle School, and Carmen graduate. I have been a student at Carmen South and a teacher at our Southeast High School. I say this every time I'm here, and I'm going to say it again. Carmen transformed my life. They helped me dream big, but also helped me achieve that dream. I stand here on behalf of my students and community today. I am too a part of this community. I am too an MPS student. Last time we were here, 3/4 of this auditorium was filled with Carmen burgundy shirts. Dozens of Carmen students spoke to you about what Carmen means to them. They shared their dreams with you and talked about the great things they're doing in our city. I hope those testimonials are still in your heart today. Today, I would just like to add some context around the most recent example of our attempt to partner with Pulaski and the district. This past summer, we collaborated with Pulaski leadership and central office to explore ways in which we might provide additional space for their program without needing to go through the arduous process of revising our lease, which requires board approval. Although we requested specific details, including, yes, number of classrooms needed and number of students impacted, we also specifically requested which times of the day you would need it so that we could perhaps come up with a compromise. If we don't use it 3 or 4 blocks, maybe you could use it, right? Compromise or collaboration. But we did not receive that specific information as requested from Pulaski leadership until late October. At this point in the school year, implementing significant changes, as many of you know who run schools and are in charge of, supporting our students across the schools, it would disrupt schedule, impact student learning, routines, put undue strain on our teachers, but not to mention all those spaces requested are currently in use and fully utilized. Our lease for 100 students at Pulaski High School is being fully utilized by Carmen students, as we have always requested and always asked for. We remain committed to working in partnership with Pulaski and MPS, yet timing is critical to ensure that best outcomes are there for all of our kids. Truly, all of them, right? Pulaski and Carmen alike, Walker, Alba students, and Carmen students. So we look forward to continued collaboration. Please amend the resolution to include 1-year extension. Thank you.
All right. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Director Zombar.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. And I know we spoke about this earlier this year, but the intent of this resolution was to give Carmen ample time to plan. This was nearly 2 years before the expiration of the lease. And I think what's really frustrating to me is that, we're hearing there's still existing concerns about the space for the rest of the lease. I do think that the board should be approving modifications to the lease about different rooms being used. I'm incredibly frustrated that if there is a willingness to do that the board hasn't been able to vote on a change to the lease rooms. To the rooms that are being leased right now. And if there's not a willingness to share space that's being underutilized, and it doesn't mean that one school isn't using the space, but I say underutilized kind of in the same term that we're using when we're looking at our facility study, right? Like, we're using full buildings, but in the eyes of the law or in the eyes of data, they're underutilized. And so obviously if one school has 1,000 students and the other has 600 something, but the building is split in half, someone is using more space and someone is using less space. So that sends a message to the board that there hasn't been a willingness to share the underutilized space in a way that works best for all students. And it tells me that if there needs to be an extra year while Carmen finishes their new building, I'm struggling with how this is going to work. And I think obviously the way the lease is written right now is not working. So what I would urge my colleagues is to move approval of the resolution as modified, but then have administration bring back a new lease proposal to the board that addresses, if it's needed, that significantly addresses the concerns of both host schools or utilizes a surplus building. And then give board options to look at if it's needed. Obviously, we don't want students to be displaced. We want Carmen students to have a home while the building is being built, and we want students to have adequate space that's good for learning. But what's working at this co-location lease, actually both sites, is not what's best for kids right now. We have special education kids in music rooms. We've got, I mean, you've heard all of it. So I guess that's where I'm at, is splitting the two conversations, because we can't just extend the lease the way it's written now. It's not working. It's not what's best for all kids.
Director Leonard.
So, yeah, I mean, we definitely want to end co-location, and I agree with Director Zomber on the idea. I'm a little bit. I do know that there was some type of possible meetings. I was not aware that both Carmen and Pulaski were trying to work this out. I had talked to people from Pulaski and Carmen, but I did not know of any formalized meetings. So I guess my first question, Bridget, am I just not aware of this, or when did this take place?
Administration.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Bridget Schock, Director of Contracted School Services. So there was some conversation over the summer regarding some room, and then more recently some more space to be shared, and looking at a shared agreement about some rooms that could be done that is between the principals and the school leaders to figure out a time slot in a period and how many rooms could be available, and I believe that's still under discussion.
So I'm going to make a comment about that, and not against you, but sometimes MPS moves very, very slow. I don't know how else to say it. So I'd like to I'm the kind of person who likes to get things done, and I do get frustrated with that. I do agree with you, Director Zomber, though, that we have to pass this and move this forward. I think your idea of requiring, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking that we require actually sitting down and getting to some options with regard to the lease. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
Director Zomber.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I think any changes to the way the buildings are being utilized should be documented and approved by the board, and I think the city attorney should look at it. I think not doing that is how we got into the music room mess many years ago at Alba. And I think that's also what's best for transparency to the public, so that the public knows how the building's being utilized.
Thank you. I'm good.
Yep. Director Herndon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I, for one, was involved at Carmen from the very beginning of the co-location. And ever since then, I've spoken at board meetings before I was ever on the board about the issues that would arise with this co-location. It wasn't working then. It's not working now. And I do agree with Director Zomber for us to put this forth as written tonight. But in addition to that, when we talk about the lack of spaces, I've been hearing it for years, even as a board director. And then the one thing that was a huge issue for me, being a Black woman, and having our children treated like second-class citizens by having them get scanned, which we were here, we heard it, and it hasn't stopped. I don't think we need a contract to stop that. I think that needs to be immediate, because and even parents and other teachers have said the same thing. How can our kids go through scanners when the other students could very well come through with anything? It's not fair. And that's my preaching for it. It's not fair, and no students, no one should be treated like that under the same building.
I would like to, go ahead. Director Zomber, you go ahead. No.
I was going to make a motion, but you can go
Okay.
ahead.
I would like to pass the gavel to Director Herndon.
Okay, Director Jackson,
Yeah.
go ahead, I have the gavel.
Gotcha. So I totally get it. I understand it. And I also know that, unfortunately, co-location hasn't worked. But I know that it can. But at this time right now, I will say we should end the co-location because either side is not healthy. In addition to that, if we modify the lease, to what degree? And what type of extension, what does that look like for Carmen to exit Pulaski to make sure that their kids are not just, out there? Because once again, all these kids are ours, are MPS. But with that being said, Pulaski definitely need their space, and I understand that. And unfortunately, when this all took place, the proper planning wasn't done. The metrics, the blueprint, it wasn't set. So here we are now bearing the brunt, as well as our children who have to carry this load as well on both sides of the fence. And if we modify this lease, what does that look like? Because in construction, things do happen. But if the school leader is saying, if everything works out, we will exit, we wouldn't need that. So he's given that commitment. So what would that look like if we agreed upon, or if we talked about, that extension or the modifying of a lease for Carmen?
Administration.
Director Jackson, members of the committee, the lease that is in force right now would expire. So then we could enter into negotiations for a new lease. We could determine the terms there, whether that's involving timing, involving an early exit opportunity, involving the space utilization. All those could be addressed at that time, and then it would be a legally binding document, just like the one we are in now, which is set to expire at the end of this school year.
Of course. So the current lease ends 2020. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Bridget Schock, Director of Contracted School Services. The lease expires at the end of the 2026
yes.
school year. Yep. So 2026 of June would be when the lease would expire.
Thank you.
Administration, I see Attorney Shettle here. Did you have something you wish to share?
I wasn't done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So with that being said, with that lease expiring 2026, then I was asking upon if we had to extend or modify something further with the school leader upon, as he stated already, with construction. If it should happen, I don't think it would, but just, but we will definitely end the co-location. But if it should happen, how will we modify that lease moving forward if we went into that agreement for early termination, if he didn't need it?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance. So once the lease expires at June of 2026, with state statute, you can lease with an entity up to 15 years, and at that point, we'd be at 14 years. So we could, go into terms where you would draft a new lease, but you can also amend it to extend it to another year on the same term. So there's a couple options after the 2026 year.
Gotcha.
Anything else?
I'm clear.
Okay. Attorney Shettle.
Chair Herndon, members of the board, Attorney Jordan Shettle, Assistant City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office. Nothing truly further to add. I think the administration did a good job highlighting the concerns. I think also that, if there were to be any further contract or lease extension, at the end of the day, that has to be a negotiation. It's hard to picture what that looks like right now because we don't know what Carmen is looking for at this stage. Thanks.
Thank you. With that, I'll return the gavel.
Thank you. So what is the pleasure of the committee in respects to this item? Directors on board.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I do intend to make a motion similar to what I had stated earlier. I do want to just put an idea out there that if there is another lease that is negotiated with Carmen for additional time, if we can just think about how we can make it more fair to Alba and Pulaski for not being able, because we're just continuing to disrupt their program too. And so would there be a way, if the lease did have to be extended, where maybe they get the money from the lease, or there's something we can do to just ease in the burden of not being able to plan as much as they really should be. So I just want to get that idea out there. Not saying that we have to do that or that, they might not even need the extension, but just hold that idea in your mind for, when we maybe make a decision down the road. Okay, so I move to approve, and actually I have, do you want to give that to them so they have it? I move approval of resolution 2425R001 as modified, and direct the administration to bring back a new Carmen lease proposal to the board if needed that sufficiently addresses the concerns of both host schools.
Shirley, go ahead.
Is there any further discussion? No. All right. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zomber's motion to approve Resolution 2425R-001 as modified and direct administration to bring back a new Carmen lease proposal back to the board if needed that sufficiently addresses the concerns of both host schools. Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what's the next item?
Item 3 is an update with possible action on Resolution 2324R-007, audit review of expulsion process. This is an informational item, although it has been noticed for possible action. No action is required.
All right. Will the Office of Accountability and Efficiency please present the item?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. It was in February of this year that the board approved a resolution that directed an audit to review the expulsion process, including expelled students, early reinstatement students, and the revocation of an early reinstatement order. That review with an accompanying report is available. It's attached. There's a presentation that the Audit Services team is going to deliver for you now from the Chief Auditor, Mr. Paul Geib, and his additional auditor on the staff, Yused Mua. They're going to lead you through the presentation, and we can answer your questions thereafter.
Gotcha. Before we proceed with public comments and the committee's discussion, the chair will remind everyone that our discussion must center around the audit report. In order to comply with the student privacy laws, the chair will not entertain any comments about specific students. Madam Secretary, do we have any members of the public wish to make comments?
I know we had, you
Just
had,
need to. Okay.
we had several speaker slips on this.
All right. Angela Harris, as well as Jennifer Olandolf.
Point of information, is it possible to have an OAE present the audit report first and then take testimony?
We could do that.
Is that okay?
We could do that, yes.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Members of the committee, good evening, administration, OAE. Again, Paul Geib, Chief Auditor, OAE Audit Services. I do have Yused Mua with me tonight. Yused was the lead auditor on the audit that is being presented. I'm not going to read these slides, but I want to highlight some of the information. The scope of this review was over about almost a 1.5-year period, July 1, 2022 through January 31st, 2024. And we reviewed expelled students, early reinstatement, and revocation of early reinstatement students. During that period, there were 231 students expelled. There was only one early reinstatement student in that number. The rest were expelled students. So we started with a universe of 231 expelled students, and we tested 50 of those students. We took a sample of regular students as well as students with IEP and 504 students. And the focus was to look at the design of the controls that were in place to address state statutory requirements.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to hit present.
Oh, wait, thank you. I'm still on the slide. Sorry. Okay. So our task was twofold. One was to take a look at the design of the controls, and the other was to take a look at the implementation of the processes. So So we did, in order to do that, we had a number of different things that we did to address the objectives, including holding meetings with student services. And I did want to again thank Mr. Boswell, Ms. Coleman, and Mr. Strawn for their cooperation and assistance during this process. We did conduct interviews. We reviewed the state statutes as well as district administrative policies and procedures and departmental guidelines and manuals. And we looked at, again, when we were looking at the 50 students, we were looking at their individual student records and support. But again, this was a focus on students who were expelled. And what we found was that the design of their internal controls was adequate and the implementation of their processes was adequate. And I highlight a few areas that the department excels, including the fact that they do provide a training for school administrators and central services staff. They do it on demand as well, and they had very well-maintained student expulsion records that made our job easy in terms of being able to review the documentation. We did have some recommendations that related more toward kind of strengthening an already strong process. And again, I'm not looking to read each and every one of these slides, but again, when you look at an audit report, how it's organized, we begin by setting out a certain set of questions that we want to answer, our objectives. And then we go about putting an audit program together to address those objectives. And along the way, we work with the auditee to inform them if we do find issues, we're in real time letting them know so that they can make enhancements or corrections as the audit moves along. We don't wait till the audit is issued then to have them learn what the findings are. So in this report, this presentation, we show the finding, we show what our recommendation is, and we indicate what the management's responses are. And again, I'm happy to report that the administration was in concurrence with all of our recommendations and was in the process or is in the process now of addressing them through their corrective actions. When we finish these audit reports, we also come back in about 12 months to ensure that all of the recommendations are addressed. We don't wait, though, to come back and talk to them 12 months later. We are checking in periodically during that interim period. We had regular audit findings as well as best practices that we note in this report. So we had 6 findings, and then we had several best practices. You'll see that as I move along here, one of the issues that we did come across was that the expulsion hearings themselves, they're recorded, and there should be video and audio. And we did find some examples where there were some issues with the recordings or the audio. That had probably one of the higher non-compliance rates, which was still 14% of the sample tested, which was still very good. They did have the documentation. It was the video and audio recordings that there was some technical glitches with. I'm just going to kind of move through this to get to some of the best practices. They do, Student Services does work also with our Specialized Services Department as well on these processes. There are, and I can let you said speak to that just very briefly, but there are a couple of different paths when we're talking about student expulsions as it relates to regular students or special ed students. So I'm just going to turn it over to Yusuf just very briefly. Just to talk about manifestation process versus IR.
Chair Johnson, member of the board, this is Yusuf Moore, performance auditor 2. Just briefly on the expulsion preliminary conferences, the administration do have 2 different type of conferences, preliminary conferences. The PEH, they're referring to as preliminary expulsion hearing, and the investigative review, which is the IR hearing. That one is specifically for specialized students with special services like IEP or 504. And the PEH is a preliminary hearing, expulsion hearing, that is being done for the regular students. So just to keep it brief, that would be the difference between the 2 types of the preliminary expulsion hearing conference.
Thank you. And we did, again, in our sample of 50 students who were expelled during that scope period, we did test regular IEP and 504 students. I'm going to now leave it up to the committee members to ask any questions you may have.
All right. First, I'm going to get public testimony. All right. Angela Harris, as well as Jennifer Ollendorf.
The least sexy agenda item of tonight. Angela Harris, Harris. So I looked at this prior to coming to this meeting, and again, I would just encourage and urge the board to create presentations that are more accessible to the community. Because as a educated, very well educated person reading this, I did not know exactly what I was looking at, right? And so if I don't know what I'm looking at, our parents aren't going to know what they're looking at, particularly parents of students that have been expelled. One thing that I feel like was missing from this is I understand expulsions are for students that are 16 or older, but what about those students that are central office referred? And then they are sent to another school, right? Like, so we have students that were kicked out of one school and then they come to our school. So they're not necessarily expelled from the district, but they are excluded from their school environment. Like, how do we account for those students and where those students go, right? Like, and how the school is identified where they might need to go. So say, for instance, I have a school that has 600 or 700 students, and now a student has been central office referred to our school that has humongous behavior problems. Our school might not be able to adequately help that student and provide the reentry process and the other things that the student needs in order to be successful. So I just feel like those were a couple of things that were missing from this report that I think would give us a better picture about what not just expulsion, but exclusion looks like within our district. Thank you.
Thank you again, Jennifer Ollendorf, MPS parent. And I think many of you were here in February when I gave my testimony about what had happened to my family. And Mr. Boswell, you and I have met about this issue and additionally. And so to Director Jackson's point, I won't bring up anything specific to our case except for the fact that what happened to us was so egregious that I cannot believe that it was a one-off. And so what I'd like to say about this audit is that I'm grateful that it happened, and I'm grateful to find that by and large, the district is compliant with state statutes. But what I, as a parent of children in the district and a concerned parent of all of my children's friends, is that that's the bare minimum. Being compliant with state statutes is the bare minimum. And when we talk about expulsion for level 3 and 4 offenses, this again removes a child from their community. And so I think what's really, really important is that we're missing two of the things that I had asked for when I first testified in support of this audit. The first is that I had asked for us to examine the independent hearing officers that conduct the preliminary hearings, the investigative reviews, and then the expulsion hearings themselves. What kind of training do they have? What kind of understanding do they have about what amount of evidence should be required to exclude a student in this way? And how are they evaluated? How frequently are they evaluated? What is that process like? Additionally, the other thing is that I think we should seriously look at the evidentiary standards that they use to conduct these reviews. How do they examine that evidence? How do they weigh that evidence? Because it was in our experience not done. The third thing that I think should still be audited or be considered to look at is what is the training. Well, I know now that we do have processes the principals are supposed to find to gather particular evidence where you would have evidence that matches the charge, right? So if you have a level 3 offense and you have a particular offense that's being named, that there should be evidence in the student's packet that they did the thing they're being said that they did. In our case, that did not happen. Now, it happened in the legal system. The assistant district attorney said there's no evidence here, nothing happened, dismissed charges. However, the independent hearing officer, having glanced at the evidence, said there is enough to move forward and potentially expel this child, right? So I think it's really important for us to understand, do the principals understand what kind of evidence that they should be gathering, and do the independent hearing officers take a look at that and require that the principals have provided the evidence that would match the charge that the child is being charged with in order to then exclude them from their educational community. I thank you for listening. I thank you for the audit that you've done, and I hope that there will be more examination of this process, that we won't stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? So, Ms. G,
I have a question.
Right. Committee members, you will have to fill out another speaker's
Oh,
slip.
I do?
Yeah,
Oh,
to speak on
okay.
this item.
Okay, sorry.
You can,
I'll be in order.
no, you can fill out one right now. Yes, it's just the process.
Yes, sir. And I want to follow the process. Okay.
Just for, okay. Director's on board?
I have a lot of questions, so
No problem.
we'll just do one little one. Can administration, first of all, I just want to thank OAE and Audit for conducting this. I can tell a lot of work was put into this. It gives us a starting point. I know we're definitely not done with this conversation, but it gives us a good starting point to know what's being followed, kind of what. I'll leave it at that. Can administration tell us about how the independent hearing officers are selected?
Administration.
Good evening, Chair Jackson, members of the committee. Nicole Coleman, Manager of Student Services. Many of our independent hearing officers, sometimes we send out a notification to community organizations sometimes to ask them if they have anybody that is willing to serve as a independent hearing officer. Many of our independent hearing officers are former administrators who have retired from the district.
Director Zumbar.
Thank you. I think one of the things that would give me more peace of mind as a board member who's, delegating our authority to independent hearing officers is if the board can have more of, just more of like input into who's getting selected, how they're getting selected, or just more information than maybe we would get on some other appointments, because we are delegating our authority to these individuals. So that's probably a policy change that maybe we can look at LRP. But I think that's something that it's hard when we get this list to approve every month and we don't know who the people are in a way that we probably should, who are essentially doing some of our work for us. And so it's hard to put that trust in people without knowing more information about them. So I'll defer to the community member that had more comments.
Dr. G.
Thank you all for your time and your patience. I am new to this district, to the school district. I'm more familiar with Memphis, Tennessee district. I have 2 children, 5 grandchildren, which now resides in Texas, but my children attended Memphis City Schools. I actually, my youngest child, and I'm gonna pose a question, I'm leading up to the question with a short story. My youngest child decided to buy some marijuana when he reached the 11th grade from a drug dealer in the school system. And Memphis had this particular, and I'm sure it's still in order, where if you report a drug activity, then you will get paid. Well, the police officer, because I have a relationship with the police officers there, ended up telling me this, that the drug dealer sold the drugs to my son, then went and reported him to get paid. So he ended up getting paid twice. Nevertheless, my son ended up getting expelled from the school. We had to go to the school board. And they end up having this program, and I'm making a long story short, the program where if the parent, me, who do not do drugs, who do not drink or smoke, I will have to sign a contract that I will go through this rehabilitation program with my son in order for him to get back into the school. So once again, to make a long story short, my question is, do we have anything here in the city of Milwaukee that has a program that will involve the parent while the child is being rehabilitated far as they act? So, I'm a person who like proactive instead of being reactive. So, but if a child get in trouble, you expel the child, what type of rehabilitation program do we have that will hopefully not allow the child to go back into what they were initially expelled for? Thank you.
Yep, administration.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. So when our students go through an expulsion process and they're sent to an alternative school, we have expulsion with educational services. So actually, we never expel kids because they continue educational services. But we do have programs aligned with AODA and other things to address those issues. The program in which the speaker brought about, I think, is an excellent program. I think it's definitely one that we should explore. I've heard of similar programs. We don't have a program that goes that deep into the rehabilitation process with the family and with the student. But I am encouraged to seek programs of that nature because I think that would be good for our students.
Absolutely. Thank you. To that degree, Director Zomber, does that fit what you were talking about in addressing what Dr. G had addressed as well? Does it align with what you were saying too, is what I'm asking. Gotcha. Yes, go ahead, Director Leonard.
Just a question for myself for clarity. I looked on page 9, talking about the 2 samples, and it talks about hearings as in being open or closed. I've done a number of expulsion hearings. I don't remember them ever being open. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the term means. So if you could just correct me on that.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Nicole Coleman, Manager of Student Services. So at the beginning of each one of the expulsion hearings, the independent hearing officer will pose the question to the parent whether or not they want the proceedings to be open or closed. If they're open, anybody can come in and participate and observe, but 9 times out of 10, 100 times out of 10, 100 times, parents will opt for the expulsion hearing to be closed.
Thank you.
Any other committee members? Director Zumbar?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Would administration be able to talk a little bit more about how IHOs are trained and how they are evaluated if we evaluate them?
Administration.
Chair Jackson, member of the committee. Yes, so each year our IHO officers, are trained yearly on state stature, on student code of conduct, on in terms of investigative packet review, so on and so forth. There is no formal training evaluation process. We do evaluate them monthly in terms of their decisions. I actually look at all expulsions that are recommended or signed off by IHO officers to just make sure that everything is in line with state statute, with the decision. Was it fair to the parent? If we see a consistency of their following statute, they following administrative policy, they will be welcomed back the following year. If we start to see there's, a patterns of some unbalanced decision-making, things of that nature, then they will not be requested to come back. So we're open to develop a formal process, we're happy to do that work.
Director Zumbar?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Are parents notified during any part of this process if their child is expelled? Are they notified of their right to appeal, or is that something that we assume they know?
Administration.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Nicole Coleman, Manager of Student Services. When a student is going through the process, the first part of the process is a preliminary expulsion hearing. The rights associated with the expulsion process are outlined on the back of the initial letter for the preliminary expulsion hearing. Students then, once it's been determined it's going to move forward towards expulsion, they receive a notice of student expulsion hearing. The rights there to appeal are also outlined on the back of that letter as well.
Director Zumbar?
Thank you. This is a totally different topic, but are IR and preliminary conference hearings also recorded, or do we only record the final hearing?
Administration.
Thank you. Chair Jackson, members of the committee. So we only record the expulsion hearings because that's required by statute.
Director Zumbar?
Could there be a benefit for us in recording the other two?
Administration.
In terms of kind of evaluating IHOs, or not IHOs, but because I know, just in terms of our process, if someone had to go back and look for training, would that be helpful to have those recordings?
They can be, yes.
Director Leonard, Director Herndon? No, nothing else? No?
This item was a report only, no action is required.
Can I just?
Yes,
Administration. Just members of the committee, I just really want to thank Mr. Geib and his team. They did an excellent job. When you hear audits, sometimes it could be a little intimidating. I just really want to thank him and his team in terms of their collaboration, in terms of their partnership, in terms of their approach and focus to better this process. I just want to make sure that I publicly say you did an excellent job, and I just appreciate you. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you, administration, as well. All right. Next item, please.
Item 4 is action on monthly personnel matters, action on classified personnel transactions, action on certificated appointments, action on leaves of absence, report on resignations and retirements, and the affirmative action report. The recommendation is that the board approve the promotions, appointments, and leaves as listed in the attachments to the item to be effective upon approval by the board.
Administration, please present this item.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent, the administration requests your approval of the monthly personnel matters as attached in this month's report. I have with me Adria Maddaleni to summarize this report and answer any questions you have regarding this request.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? All right. What is the, excuse me, I didn't ask. Was there any comments from the public?
There are none.
Gotcha. What is the pleasure of this committee with respects to this item?
I move that we approve the personnel matters as presented by the administration.
Okay.
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the personnel matters as recommended by administration, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Next item, please.
Item 5 is action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases, decreases, and limited-term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. The recommendation is that the board approve the appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases, decreases, and limited-term employment contracts exceeding 60 days as listed in the attachments to the item to be effective upon approval by the board.
Will the administration please present this item?
Excuse me. Chair Jackson, members of the committee, the administration requests your approval of this item as it pertains to recommendations for appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, as well as salary increases or decreases and LT employment. I have with me Adria Maddaleni to outline this item and respond to any questions you may have.
Okay. Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
There are none.
All right. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we accept the recommendations of administration on this item.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay.
On Director Herndon's motion to accept administration's recommendation on this item, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Before we proceed to the next item, on behalf of the board, the chair would like to congratulate all the candidates listed in the previous 2 items. You are now one step closer to your appointment, promotion, and/or transfer. They may not be in the audience, but they're listening. Absolutely. All right, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 6 is action on a request to approve prevailing wages. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached prevailing wage rates effective as of July 1st, 2024.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. This evening, I have Adria Maddaleni with me as we request your approval of this item as it pertains to prevailing wages. The recommendation is necessary in order to maintain our current building trade workers, recruit new workers, and stay competitive with the market. With approval, the prevailing wages are, as attached, will take effect July 1st, 2024. At this time, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any comments or questions from the audience?
There are not.
Okay. Committee members, any comments or questions? Matthew Chason.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Matt Chason, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. Just real quickly, and I always preface this comment by saying my intent is not to cast shade on what we pay for tradespeople. They provide very valuable work, and the market pays the following rate. But in order to highlight the challenge that we have in order to attract and retain educators, I just point out that when we look at the lowest paid on the prevailing wage schedule, that of a building laborer, which is $36 an hour, if you were to annualize that, that amount is over $70,000. It takes a teacher on our current salary schedule with a bachelor's degree 10 years to make that amount. And that's what this person is making, as they enter the trades at that level. So anyway, I draw attention to that because this is really, I think, becoming an existential problem for not just us, but any educational agency where we have to attract and retain educators and apply wages that make it competitive within industry. So thank you for letting me make that comment.
All right. Director Zumbar, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. One of the things that we've been, I think, encountering, Director Herndon and I, with the Inflation Reduction Act credit work is that some of the requirements to get the federal the federal tax rebates, we're incentivized if we're paying prevailing wage for that work. So I think that's something for us to also consider.
You had a question, Director Herndon?
I was just going to say that's kind of the driving force behind that whole thing. But I get what you're saying about the low wages for teachers, and I totally agree with that.
Director Leonard? Anything? No? Okay. No problem. Oh, excuse me, Director Zumbar?
I just wanted to move approval of the administration's recommendation that the board approve the attached prevailing wage rates effective as of July 1st, 2024.
Absolutely.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the prevailing wages as attached in the administration's recommendation, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Yes. Congratulations to our tradesmen and women. Next item, please, Madam Secretary.
Item 7 is action on monthly finance matters, report on change orders in excess of $25,000, report of revenues and expenses, monthly expenditure control report, report on contracts under $50,000, and cumulative total report, report on monthly grant awards, acceptance of donations. The recommendation is that the board accept the donations as listed in the attachments with appropriate acknowledgement to be made on behalf of the board.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, for this item, the administration is requesting your approval of the monthly finance matters. Janine Adamczyk is here with me to address any questions you may have regarding this item.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
There are no speaker slips.
Okay. Do committee members wish to make any comments or questions? No? All right. What is the pleasure of the committee in respects to this item?
Do we have a motion?
There we go. Director Soundboard.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I move approval of the administration's recommendation to accept the donations as listed in the attachments.
Gotcha. Is there any further discussion? All right. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the recommendation of administration, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, please present the next item.
Item 8 is action on monthly facilities matters, FMS award of construction contract, material purchase, and informational report recommendation. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached construction contract, material purchase, and informational report.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. We are asking your approval of this month's facilities matters. I have with me Sean Kane to address any questions you have concerning this item.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
We have no speaker slips.
Okay. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? No? I would just make a comment. I would like to pass the gavel.
Okay, I have the gavel.
Got you. Just want to acknowledge in this right here, I know it's a hefty price tag, a little over $5 million, but very reputable companies, Zenego, as well as Viola, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So just to get a public a little bit of understanding of who we're contracting with, very reputable company. I would like to return the gavel.
Administration.
Director Jackson, members of the committee, again, we go through our standard processes for everybody that we work with to vet them to make sure that they can perform the duties that we need them to perform, and thank you for that acknowledgement.
Yes, sir.
Okay, are there any more remarks? I'll return the gavel to Director Jackson.
Gotcha. Any other discussion? All right, well, the secretary, what is the pleasure in regards to this item?
So So we don't approve that?
We have a
I move that
motion?
we approve the monthly facilities matters that have been presented by the administration.
All right, on Director Leonard's motion to approve the monthly facilities matters as presented by administration, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Leonard,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 9 is action on the award of professional services contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the professional services contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval of the professional services contracts before you. Janine Adamczyk is with me to assist with any questions you may have regarding this item.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments or questions?
There are no speaker slips.
Gotcha. Do any committee members wish to make any comments or questions? Director Leonard?
Just a quick one. The digital mapping, that's being paid by the Department of Justice? Do I understand that correctly from what I read?
Director Jackson, members of the committee, that is part of a grant that we do have. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything? No. Any further discussion? All right. So what is the pleasure in regards to this item?
I move that we accept the professional services that have been presented by the administration.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to accept the professional services contracts as presented by administration, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Leonard,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 10 is action on the award of exception to bid contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the exception to bid contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, we are asking your approval of this month's exception to bid contracts. Janine Adamczyk is with me to assist with any questions you may have.
Do we have any comments from from the public?
We have none.
All right. Any committee members wish to make any comments or have any questions? All right. What is the pleasure of this committee in regards to this item? Thank you, Director Leonard.
I move that we accept the award of exception to bid contracts as presented by the administration.
Gotcha. Is there any further discussion? All right. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Leonard's motion to accept the award of the exception to bid contracts as presented by administration, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Leonard,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, could you please present the next item?
Item 11 is action on a resolution in accordance with Wisconsin Administrative Code 80.60, Parent 3, stating the board's intent and agreement to self-insure for workers' compensation benefits. The recommendation is that the board adopt the resolution to authorize the renewal of the board's self-insurance status at its regular meeting on October 31st, 2024, as attached to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent, every 3 years, the district has to reapply for self-insurance to be in alignment with the Wisconsin Workers' Compensation Act and guidelines set forth by the Department of Workforce Development. I have with me Janine Adamczyk to address any questions you may have at this time.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
We have no speaker slips.
Okay. Any committee members wish to make any comments or have any questions? No. All right. What is the pleasure of this committee in respects to this item? Director Zomber.
I move approval that the board adopt the resolution as attached to authorize the renewal of the board's self-insurance status.
Any further discussion? All right. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zomber's motion to move to approve the resolution as attached in line with administration's recommendation, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Leonard,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Okay. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
All right, seeing that this business is concluded,